And I am still pulling up my agenda. My computer for some reason is really slow. Okay, so thank you. I have it now. Commissioner Palmer, would you like to take the roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Brooks. 4B01.
Present.
4B02 is present. 4B03.
Commissioner Johnson, can you hear us? We'll come back to her.
Okay, well, I see her
You
name
can
there.
see that she popped up, yeah.
Yeah. 4B04.
Present.
4B05 is vacant. 4B06.
Present.
4B07.
Present.
4B08.
Present.
And 4B09 is not present. Okay.
Hmm.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. So we will, as we always do, start these meetings by discussing how to reach out during the Zoom meeting. We ask that you use the raise your hand function if you have a question and or *9 if you are on the telephone. We also request, if possible, you put your questions in the Q&A and we'll read them at the appropriate time. So we'll jump right into the consideration and approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about the agenda? Silence is acceptance. So we will accept the agenda as presented and then move on to the May meeting minutes. Those meeting minutes were sent around to everyone, and I hope you've had an opportunity to review them. Has everyone had that opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, any questions or concern with regard to the minutes? Silence is acceptance. All right, is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
I make a motion to accept as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Miss Brenda? Thank you. Jocelyn, we can't see or hear you, but you're not on mute. So if you're working through an issue, just, oh, she dropped off. Well, I hope she comes back. Okay. For now, we'll accept the meeting minutes and move on to the treasurer's report. Commissioner Bromwich.
Yes. The only update for now is I will report the current balance of our checking account, which is $50,542.21.
Thank you.
That's it. We will have a quarterly financial report to approve in our next meeting.
All right, great. Then we'll move right on. We'll move into commissioner updates and we'll go in numerical order. Commissioner Yates, do you have an update?
Nothing at this time, Chair Brooks.
Thank you. Commissioner Palmer?
Yes, just a brief update. I don't have additional details at this time, but I think I informed community members before that the Aspen Street neighbors received the second round of grant funding for the Community Stormwater Solutions Grant. And that request for proposals should be going out soon. So I don't have much additional information now, but will soon. And it may include a community build component where community members can help install some of the stormwater infrastructure. So I'll make sure to get that out once we have the information. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. We'll have to come back to Commissioner Jocelyn Johnson if she's able to join. Commissioner Parks, do you have an update? Or anything you need to
The only thing that I
mention?
have is that I have talked with DC Water about the letters. I hope that some people received and some didn't. And so they are going to schedule a meeting. I don't know exactly when, but I told them to schedule the meeting so that people could attend. Don't schedule the meeting the day of the meeting. And so I'm hoping to hear back from them because my constituents had a lot of questions about the pipes that they're going to remove and put in with the water system. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Commissioner Tiffany Johnson?
So just brief update and also the same with my SMD with regard to DC water. We're also getting some of our pipes reinstalled. There's information about that project in my free little library. Also, I'm still accepting always donations of books and food for my free pantry. And last but not least, and I'm sure the council member will talk about this more, on Wednesday evening, she has rescheduled her Ward 4 summer safety meeting. It's going to be at 5 p.m. at McFarland Middle School off of Iowa Avenue, and several of our community safety and support committee members, as well as myself, will be in attendance.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Bromagen?
I don't have any updates at this time, I don't think.
Okay. 4B08 update. We had a meeting just at the beginning of, or actually, I guess about a week ago, and we will not be meeting in July. Hopefully, I'll have a newsletter out to keep everyone updated. And if anyone has any questions, they know how to reach me. So with that, we will move on to community concerns. Again, if you have a question or comment, please use the raise your hand function and or dial *9 from your telephone. Let's give that a second to see if anyone starts. While we're waiting for oh, we have a raised hand already. I think I know who this is, but is this Kimmy Tignor? If so, ask that you unmute yourself and ask your question.
Oh, yes. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you guys?
We're great.
This is so much better. I was, hopefully I'm not on camera because I am
No, you're not.
ready. And it was going to take a long time to type this, but basically, I guess I've just been wondering, you know, with the infrastructure money that's sort of been put out there and some sort of larger, bigger sort of DDOT projects we've heard about over the years. I'm just wondering if that has come up, you know, at the sort of, you know, sort of mayoral level, at ANC level, or, you know, neighborhood commissioner level, and just wanted to start sort of talking about that.
So you picked the right meeting to come and ask your question.
Awesome.
Because we have representation from DDOT here tonight. It has not necessarily been a conversation that's been had to date with ANC commissioners, but that's one of the reasons we're happy that DDOT is here.
Okay.
So I think if it's okay with you, we will defer the answer to your question until we hear those presentations and make that a part of the conversation. Are you comfortable with that?
Yep, sounds great.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move next.
Chair Brooks, there's a question in the Q&A if you'd like me to read it.
Sure, go ahead.
Several neighbors have been discussing ATVs. Carla Williams, Harvard University. Several neighbors have been discussing ATVs on DC streets. There were different views, but some ideas were put forward to create a win-win solution that involves specifying locations, days, times, and venues that might entice riders to ride elsewhere at their own risk. Fines, taxes, and fees were also suggested.
Okay, and I just, Ms. Williams is available to speak if she needs to, but I don't know what the question is as much as that is a statement. And if MPD is present during their presentation and they can address that, did we capture your thought, Ms. Williams?
Yes, it is a statement in terms of we would like to see some focus and attention on the issue. And
Okay.
of course, it can't be resolved in the meeting, but we would like to see this added to a longstanding agenda to get to a solution.
I appreciate that, and we can do that. Okay, then let's move on to the next question or comment, which would then be at the very top of this list, Scott Knickerbocker.
Good evening, commissioners and fellow constituents. I hope everyone can hear me all right.
Good evening.
Excellent. Good evening to everyone. I just wanted to bring up one of my favorite topics, one of the safety issues that we have here in the commission, and specifically in the SMD that I live in. And that's the semis parking on Piney Branch Road again. One of the strategies that I've been employing recently is, with the summer weather approaching, trucks are now idling again. So I have been able to call police non-emergency to get them to come out and enforce the DC anti-idling laws. So that is one strategy that I've been incorporating, along with tweeting 311 and calling 311 in order to report these illegally parked vehicles. In addition, so I just wanted to relay that information as a strategy that other constituents can employ to help move these trucks along to some other location. And knowing that DDOT is in attendance tonight, I would love to ask, and of course have this answered later, is what the status of the East Rock Creek livability study is, and if we are ever going to see any of the solutions that were determined from that study implemented, especially because a lot of time, effort, and money went into that study, and it's pretty much, and seems like it's been put in limbo now. That's all I have. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioner Palmer.
Yeah, I just, Scott is aware of this, but the trucks on Piney Branch are obviously a longstanding issue, and one that we've raised in any number of ways, including via 311, commission letter, commission resolution, testimony, changes in the law. They are not allowed to park there, and it can be reported, but we are continuing to have trouble with enforcement. And at some point, DDOT had told us that they would install no commercial parking signs along that stretch of Piney Branch, and that has not happened. So that's maybe something we can ask them later.
Okay, we have the luxury tonight of having some very important folks on the call. So Councilmember Lewis George happens to be here personally tonight and has responded in the chat that DPW was out today, and Officer Wright specifically, and he's now doing DPW regular drive-bys of Piney Branch Road. So we will have the ability to ask her questions, as well as the Deputy Director for DDOT. Commissioner Yates.
There's another question in the Q&A if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Rabia Mateen asks, Commissioner Brooks, any update from WASA on repairs of the fire hydrant at 3rd and Quintana?
Not recently. I can double check on that. But I have not followed up, I'll be honest. They said they were going to send someone out, and I assumed that they did that, but they did not reply to let me know. Okay, and so for those that are not aware, there was an accident at that intersection, and the fire hydrant was damaged. The fire hydrant was since replaced, repaired, but it left like a hole in the grass there that someone could easily fall into and break a leg. So we need to have that repaired, or that sod replaced. So I'll work on that, Ms. Mateen. All right, we're going to, and I did not say this at the start of the meeting, but I do want to say that we do have a very jam-packed meeting tonight. And so unfortunately, I am going to have to use the timer and keep people on task. So I apologize in advance for potentially cutting someone off. It's all in love, I promise. So why don't we get started with Anthony Mitchell from the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services. I'm sorry, Councilmember Lewis George has her hand raised. So I suppose before we start that presentation from Mr. Mitchell, we should hear what Councilmember Lewis George's question might be. So now you both are promoted to panelists.
Oh no, mine was just, my hand was just up to let you know I was here in the beginning.
Okay, well, hang on. We're gonna get to you in about 3.5 minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah,
thank you.
probably less than that.
Okay.
I'm trying to turn my video on, but it's not letting me. So y'all know what I look like. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to be here. Just a couple of quick things. Firstly, thank you to the folks that stopped by this morning for the Lamont Riggs ribbon cutting that the mayor did here on South Dakota Avenue. I saw Commissioner Brooks and Commissioner Huff, and some other folks in there. And I know a number of you supported the resolution, I believe it was, to rename the library that was submitted previously. So just wanted to say that's going to be a huge community benefit. So we'll be happy to see you all in there. Also, just want to remind folks that the last week, I know there's a lot of things going on, but want to remind folks that if your child is now, I think 6 months or older, they can now get the vaccine. So we're very excited to offer that to residents in the district. You can go to the Ward 4 COVID Center that the mayor established way back in early spring. The nearest one is one in Ward 4 on the 4700 block of 13th Street Northwest. You can go there and get vaccines, boosters, rapid tests, PCR tests, but yeah, and as well as mask, KN95 mask. So go there, check it out. And always, if there's anything that you need from me, please feel free to reach out. With that, I'm going to shut up and move out of the way of this very long agenda.
All right, does anyone have any questions for the mayor's office? Commissioner Palmer.
Hi, thank you, Anthony. I have a few questions. So there was a woman who was unhoused and had her stuff at the Tacoma playground by the structure there, and her belongings were removed while she was in the hospital. And I wanted to know if she's been reconnected to her belongings and whether she's been connected to housing and services, as well as what's going on with that structure, which is now blocked off. And I don't think any of us got any notice of what work was being done there. And then finally, to ask again about the Tacoma Aquatic Center, which the last we've heard is July. And I just want to make sure that that's the current update.
So I'm going to go backwards. Yes, that's the current update with the Tacoma Rec Center. I am not, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not as well versed in the situation that happened with the young lady's belongings being removed, but I can touch base with our folks at DPR to see what the status is that, and to provide just overall information about how we rehouse folks and just general background on that. I'm happy to provide that, but I don't have that off the top of my head. So I apologize for being unprepared.
That's okay. I'll follow up.
Okay.
We have a hand raised from Mr. Knickerbocker.
Yep. You miss us, Scott.
Sorry, I am talkative tonight. Good evening, Mr. Mitchell. Thanks for the update. About the COVID centers, it's anecdotally, I'm back in the office a couple days a week these days, and anecdotally, it seems like residents are taking the pandemic a little less serious these days, and that's fine, to each their own. But the COVID centers still seem to be keeping the same hours and whatnot. Is there any plan to ramp down efforts, or is the mayor going to keep them plowing along at the same hours and same availability?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me double check that. To my understanding, it was going to keep going as needed. So if we see a decline in need or use, then there might be a fluctuation there. But up until that point, continuing to provide the same resources as I mentioned before: the KN95 mask, rapid tests, PCR tests, vaccines, boosters, all those things. Continue to provide those as residents need those, and the numbers, as you've seen, have been spiking at certain points more recently. So having that available, we think is continuing to serve the residents and the needs in the current time. So, and to be short, no, I don't see that changing in the near future.
Wonderful. I agree with your statement as well. So yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. I'm glad you're using it.
And we'll continue to use it.
Yeah,
thank you.
No problem.
Commissioner Tiffany Johnson.
Hey, Anthony, thank you again for attending our my SMD meeting earlier this month.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Something that came out of that was for summer programs, will the city also be keeping the same data for COVID as they've been doing when individuals were in DCPS? Or because there's been some concerns that the data presented is getting slower and slower and slower to be uploaded.
Interesting. For summer programs specifically, you know how, and you're talking about how we regularly report for DCPS. Will that be regularly reported for summer programs?
Correct.
Got it. Okay, let me double check that. That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good flag. Thank you. So,
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell.
hey, thank you all so much. I know I've been probably over time so many times, but thank you for being gracious with your time always.
Of course. All right, so we'll move next to Councilmember Lewis George, as well as if you could promote Joanna Blotner as well. She has a screen share she needs to provide.
All right, good evening, ANC 4B. It's saying I'm unable to.
We're going to give you the camera. Are you going to be on camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just says unable to start video right now, but I can.
Angie, can you give her video?
She should have, yes. She has
Okay.
authorization.
Would you mind trying one more time? There you go.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you so much. So good evening, ANC 4B. It is great to see you all and be with you all. And always, as always, thank you for all that each and every one of you do as a measure of service to our community. I am grateful and thankful for your service. I wanted to stop by and give an update on the budget because we are finally done the budget. We just voted on the budget this month. I know it feels like it was years ago because of all that we've been going through with the Supreme Court, the pandemic, election, but it was just this month we passed the budget. And so I wanted to stop by and share some of our budget wins for the Ward 4 community and specific to some of your SMDs, give some updates on our DPR tours, DPR readiness, summer readiness tours, where we have a number of still outstanding issues in some of our DPR centers, but making progress on those. And so, Joanna, if you can get started, I'm going to go as quickly as possible because I know the timer is on. So when I talk fast, bear with me. Just some really great highlights that we were able to win for the budget for this season. I want to start with our rec centers, pools, libraries, and businesses. We were able to put in $1 million to replace the roof at the Riggs LaSalle Recreation Center, which will be done by 2023. The air is already working now at the Riggs LaSalle Recreation Center. I want to thank Commissioner Huff as well as Commissioner Brooks and Commissioner Bromagem all for making sure we were able to have that air working. I got pictures of them loading it on the roof. So it was great to be in there and see that. We have $1.5 million enhancement for upgrading Petworth Library. It says by 2023, but they're planning on getting started pretty soon. It's going to make that more accessible for our seniors, but also accessible level for our youth and teenagers to be able to have an area. $16 million to modernize Upshur Pool and Recreation Center by 2024. That will include the courts, the pool, and the entire center, as well as the playground in that area. We got $13 million to modernize Emory Heights Recreation Center. And so that will occur, we're on slate for by 2025 to make that happen. So talking about the field, I want to thank Commissioner Brooks, who's been helping out in that SMD with that vacancy that is still there, but Emory Heights Recreation Center will be getting some much needed renovations, especially to the field, as well as the inside. We have 25 million for a library in Brightwood Park, Manor Park. Right now we're at, by 2028, we're gonna work next year to push that up. As many of you know, we have a gap in libraries that was identified by DC Public Library as a gap area. And so we will be engaging, DCPL will be engaging, they already, I think, did one engagement with 4D, and we'll need to do one with 4B regarding what we want to, where that location should be and what we want to have in that library. Obviously, we got $400K to maintain Roosevelt Pool that we just opened last year and open it for community use. So that'll allow it to be open for the weekends as well. And then we have $200K to keep the new Petworth Main Street, and 36K, which we try to get more to keep enhanced Tacoma Main Street. Thank you to Commissioner Yates as well as Commissioner Palmer for your work around the Tacoma Main Street. And we're going to continue to work to try to get that enhancement higher as well. Oh, wow. That was one slide. I don't even know.
All right, keep going, keep going.
Okay. Keep going.
How many slides are there?
Okay, let me see. Okay, this one's important. So let me just do this one. Okay. Education, this was the biggest one. Thank you to 4B for your support here. And I know we have some partnership with 4D as well. We were able to resolve the overcrowding at Roosevelt High School and Roosevelt State, which was huge. As many of you know, Roosevelt was at 164% utilization. It was, to say, overcrowded and packed. And because our Ward 4 public schools are doing such a phenomenal job, McFarland, Roosevelt, that group, we just have so many families who want to go. And so we had to find a solution there. And so Roosevelt Stay will now get its own building at Garnett Patterson. It will be a citywide location and down in Ward 1. And Roosevelt will now have that utilized wing to utilize for their student body. We also got $9.6 million to build a new cafeteria addition for Coolidge High School. As you know, that was necessary because Ida B. Wells and Coolidge were sharing the cafeteria. At that point, Ida B. Wells has grown significantly because they too are an amazing school community. And so we needed additional cafeteria space. And so we will be getting that. I want to thank Commissioner Johnson as well. Well, I guess both Johnsons for your work around Coolidge and making sure we were able to do that. We expanded the swing space to facilitate the full modernizations for Truesdale, Whittier, and LaSalle Bacchus. So everyone is now going to be getting the modernizations they need a year ahead. Truesdale will be now swinging, instead of going down to Ward 1, they will be in the Sharp building, which we need to change the name of the Sharp building. But until then, they're at that Sharp building, and they, which will also be receiving renovations to be able to house Truesdale families. So they will not need to next year go down to Ward 1. They will be in the Ward 4 community while those renovations are done, are getting completed. I'll skip ahead. DCPS Tech Equity Act was a huge piece, was my first legislation. And we were able to, it'll be voted on in the council pretty soon, but we were able to fund that prior to its passage to make sure we were having those things needed. And then $73 million to raise pay for our early childhood educators, which is a tag along on the work that we did last year for the Homes and Hearts Amendment. So really excited to have the work done in our schools here in Ward 4 and continue to support all of our Ward 4 DC public schools and DC public charter schools. Because our school pipelines are going so great and we have such phenomenal staff, we will continue to see our schools grow, and we will continue to need to meet the need of the growth of Ward 4 families who are attending our neighborhood schools. I'll keep it short on safety. A few things. We have 6 additional closed circuit cameras to be utilized for safety areas across Ward 4. We heard from ANC commissioners who wanted to see some of those cameras and they were not available for use. So we were able to do that. Renewed funds for our Petworth and Brightwood Park Cure the Streets program. Some important things is we doubled DBH response teams for behavioral health and crisis. This is important. Commissioner Brenda Parks and I and Jocelyn Johnson talked a lot about Georgia and Rittenhouse, and we would call the DBH team to come out to support in that area particularly. And DBH usually had one team that was utilizing in another ward. So we said, well, you guys have to expand. And so we were able to double the response team for behavioral health and crisis outreach to be able to utilize across the city. So I'm really happy about that. We did get 40 million in victim services grants for our gun violence victims, LGBTQ communities, and survivors of sexual violence and domestic violence. And we were really happy to fight for that in the budget. Keep going, because I'm utilizing a lot of time. I noticed you may notice someone, a commissioner right there in that picture, Commissioner Palmer, celebrating the affordable housing that she was able to win in 410 Cedar Street Northwest, along with the community members. But these are some of the housing. You can read them here. But I just want to know a few things that are important. We got 41 new inspectors to enforce the housing code and blighted properties, and that's important for 4B, but the entire Ward 4. The number of inspectors is 3 times the number of inspectors we had previously. And as we know, we've seen buildings collapse on Kennedy Street. We've seen a number of blighted properties for a long time. So getting those new inspectors is a huge deal. And I want to thank you all for the fight to make that happen. And we also got a $3 million boost for the single family residential rehabilitation program. I remember early on knocking doors with Commissioner Brooks, neighbors who had applied for that single family residential program, assistance, needing their roofs fixed or getting things done. We were able to add some money to that program to ensure those neighbors were able to do that. So those are just some of the highlights. I'm trying to keep going as fast as I can. For our senior citizens, we did get a number of great things. I talked about the $3 million increase to single family, but I do want to note we were able to put additional $1 million to expand the connector card program for citywide mobility. As well as an increase to the shallow subsidy housing voucher for older adults, which would go to support at least 125 more seniors in helping that, as well as the annual property tax increase for senior citizens at 2% instead of a current cap of 5% to help more residents age in place. So some really great wins for our seniors, and we're really excited about that. Workers, immigrant rights, and economic justice, just want to highlight we did do $20 million to raise training wages for all DOES training programs. We have permanently expanded the school year internship program to provide jobs to 1,000 students year round. So I know people said we need to do SYP year round. SYP is now year round for 1,000 students. And as it grows, we can add more numbers, but we hope to get to 1,000 students. We removed the recertification requirements for DC Alliance, which was huge. Bria was one of the schools that really led on that. It was a burdensome thing, especially for many of our immigrant communities to have to recertify every 6 months. It was a huge barrier, and many testified on that. And so we're really happy to see that happen. I think, and of course, most important, Joanna would kill me if I didn't do this. We expanded paid leave for DC private sector workers to 12 weeks of parental, family, caregiving, and medical leave. And that starts on October 1st. Yes, we are still working on it for government workers, but right now that's the DC private sector. And that was huge to expand that to 12 weeks. So please know that and make sure you share that with the community so they're aware of their paid leave benefits and use them.
Council member.
I know you're gonna cut me off. Yes.
Oh, please don't make me.
Okay. All right. I will end here. You will all get a copy of. Okay, but the Kennedy Street thing is, the revitalization is important. The traffic safety stuff. You all see it, but we got 18 million for the Safe Routes to School Act, upgrades around schools. And I could not have put that legislation together without 4B. I want to thank Commissioner Evan Yates and the entire commission, Aaron as well, for helping put that together and funding to complete the Metro Branch Trail. Okay, I will end there, even though there's more important stuff in that PowerPoint to share.
Like what? One more thing.
Okay, wait, go back.
You're killing me.
Oh, okay. I think the crossing guards, 100+ new crossing guards for all schools that request them in the past. Schools would get denied. A number of our Ward 4 schools actually got denied crossing guards. So now we will have crossing guards at all of our schools, and $43.6 million to replace aging HVACs and boilers in DCPS schools. I know many of you know how important that is as we dealt with the HVAC systems that we had. So thank you.
The reason I wanted to ask you to wrap it up is so that people could ask you a few questions, if that's okay.
Okay, that's perfect. I will share with you all the letter from our DPR tours. We did attend every Ward 4 DPR center and have a letter. I think Joanna's going to share it. I'll forward it to all the ANC commissioners. I've asked for a meeting with Director Anderson as a result of some of the outstanding needs at some of your DPR centers, and so could always use your backup support. We are doing the back to school tour again from August 8th through August 10th. And so I'll share which date your school and your SMD is going to be there so that you can join me.
So that if I start the questions amongst the commissioners, that was going to be my question. As you know, because I've spoken to you about this, Emory does not have air conditioning and summer camp starts on Wednesday. And no one, I should have asked Mr. Mitchell when he was on earlier, but no one responded to my email. So the question over the weekend was, given that they don't have air, how does that impact the start of camp? Will those children be moved to another facility? Will the air conditioning be fixed? What are we praying for cooler weather? What are we doing?
We are told that they will have spot coolers located throughout the building and in the gym until they are able to find the missing part, the missing part that's needed for the HVAC system to be fixed. So that is the update that we've gotten regarding Emory.
Okay, thank you. Do any other commissioners have questions? Commissioner Palmer?
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. I just want to flag that it was several years ago that me and Commissioner Yates and Commissioner Bromagem did a walkthrough at the Tacoma playground and that area, and had a whole list of things for the then council member and DPR and DGS, almost all of which did not go addressed. So we would presumably like to share that with you and see what things you all put forward for fixes there. We have a commission letter also, but we did that walkthrough too.
Okay, perfect. And to your question, asbestos was found, and that's what the structure is. At Tacoma, they found asbestos and they had to do a fix of the asbestos, and that's what's surrounding the Tacoma building. That's what we were told. I would say there's a gate, the gate that is not working at the playground. That is the same. I don't know who did that gate, but that gate, whatever company did that gate, literally every park in Ward 4 gate is falling off and broken. So
that's been like that for years since we did the walkthrough with the former council member.
Okay.
Commissioner Parks, I believe your hand was raised.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember George, you mentioned crossing guard at all schools. Do those schools include the charter schools?
That does include the charter schools, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Yates?
I wanted to follow up on something I actually lost track of. The delay in the paid family leave from July 1st to October 1st that happened. What did that surplus money end up getting used for?
I am not sure, but Joanna's here, so she will.
Because I just knew there was a dispute between the mayor and the council over it, and then it got pushed back, and I never saw any coverage about what happened to the money in the end.
Happy to answer that one. Hi, Joanna with Councilmember Lewis George's office. Most of that money got spread across multiple different programs throughout the budget. There was not an exact one-for-one, which is partly why it makes it hard to find where the money is and put it back into expanded benefits. For those who are following closely, Councilmember Silverman did find funding to restore paid leave to be expanded retroactive to July. But that did not end up getting passed in the final budget after the chairman had removed it from his committee print. So the money was found, but we for the retroactive, but the rest of the money that was surplus funds was spread across throughout the budget, and is hopefully helping to fund really good programs like the ones Councilmember Lewis George mentioned.
Okay, there's one question in the chat. It's from Tisha Cockrell. In regards to the HVAC systems, are the systems being replaced with completely new units, or are they just replacing specific parts to the old ones?
Well, the 1 million for Riggs LaSalle is for a complete fix to that system. Emory theirs will be fixed with the influx when their renovation, I think it's 13 million or 20 million for Emory. That will be a completely new system. I'm also just working on legislation around making our HVAC systems green and actually going electric, but that's to come and not now. But in the future, I think that's the better way to go, so we don't have all these HVAC issues. But for right now, that 1 million for Riggs LaSalle is for a brand new system.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all for your time, and thank you again for your service and all your tireless work.
Thank you very much. So next we would hear from Fraser O'Leary, Ward 4 State Board of Education representative. While he's coming up, I'm going to suggest that we, after we hear from Fraser O'Leary, well, before I make my suggestion, I'm going to announce it now. If someone from MPD is on the call, could you please raise your hand, because I did not see an MPD representative in the attendee list. So again, if MPD is on the call, if you could please raise your hand so that we know you're here, I would greatly appreciate it. Mr. O'Leary, how are you?
I'm great. How are you all doing?
Good. The floor is yours.
Good. I can't, now I can finally see everybody. I'd like to begin by congratulating Erin Palmer on a fabulous campaign. I thought that she.
So we cannot mix the two right now. You can
okay.
congratulate her, but not during the meeting.
Okay. I take it back.
Okay.
I'll begin with good news.
All right.
It has now been over 2 years since Mrs. O'Leary's Books for Friends began delivering books to schools in Ward 4 and beyond. There have been over 30,000 books delivered. We are still collecting donations. Please pass the word to your friends and neighbors so that we can continue to put books in the hands of our elementary and middle school students. In May, there were over 10,000 books delivered to our Ward 4 elementary schools, compliments of the Reading is Fundamental program. I'll put my number in the chat and my email address, and you can drop the books on my porch at 1318 Farragut Street Northwest. If you so desire, I'll put that in the chat too. So that's the good news. Changing that to many of our Ward 4 schools have been having problems with their air conditioning systems. And this was in the last couple of months when air conditioners were supposed to be on. We have been testifying all year about the lack of support from DGS for DCPS. There's no reason why there should be a severe backlog in our maintenance problems in our public schools unless they are not a priority for our leaders. For the first time in many years, it's not about the money. We got a whole lot of money from the federal government. It's about competence. And we need to make sure that this summer, the schools are ready, because we know that the air conditioners are very important in August and September and the beginning of October, even more important than in May and June. And we have to make sure that there isn't a vacation taken this summer to get our schools ready for the students. It's right around the corner now, folks. It's going to be July on Friday, and school starts in August. So please get in touch with me about any schools in your ANC that need problems fixed. I'm not taking a vacation. And I'll put my stuff in the chat. I guess I can't see the clock, but I don't know why that is.
Well, that was the clock, but did you have
Okay.
anything else you
Oh,
need
I
to
see
add
it. I see
quickly?
it now. I'm sorry.
No worries. Was there anything else that you needed to add quickly?
No.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for State Board Representative Mr. O'Leary? I can't get past calling you Mr. O'Leary. I'm sorry. I don't
Well,
see any questions, so I think you're off the hook.
I like to be on the hook, by the way.
Okay.
But I'll put my stuff in the chat. And I do have a question for Mr. Mitchell. I've raised my hand.
Oh, I didn't see it, but you can ask him now if you like.
Okay, I would like to know what is there a program for food this summer as there was in the last couple of summers? And what are the sites in Ward 4?
Okay, Mr. Mitchell, if you could put the answer to that in the chat, we'll read it while we take a question from Griffin. I think it's Miss Griffin, but we'll
Yes,
see.
am I unmuted?
You are. How are
Okay,
you?
I would like to know, I heard the talk about the air conditioner, but who would address that? I mean, should we make calls? What could be our contribution? And the reason that it was stated in this platform, is that something the ANC people should get to work on, or is that something that we are being encouraged to make calls or write in or complaints that about the air conditioning systems in the schools?
Can I jump in before Mr.
The only
O'Leary
way we
answers
got
the question?
everything done that Councilmember George was talking about with Roosevelt Stay, with the swing space at Whittier, with the military road school, is the community needs to raise their voices.
Right.
Or its voice, I'm sorry.
Ms.
I'm
Ms.
English.
Griffin, we always need residential support, backing, involvement. We'll never shy away from your sending an email or making a phone call, because that can't do anything but bring more attention to whatever issue it is that we're trying to, whatever issue it is that we're trying to have addressed in that moment.
Okay, I was just.
So feel free, have at it. You can CC your ANC commissioner, which happens to be me, or you can CC Mr. O'Leary, you know, when you send these emails, so we're, or both of us, so that we're aware of it, but definitely need your support. And according to Councilmember Lewis George, we should email Keith Anderson at DGS, and you should CC your council member, your ANC commissioner, and your State Board of Education representative. So there you have it.
Pete Anderson at DGS.
Yes.
He's
Commissioner
the
Palmer, do you have
director.
something to add?
Yeah, I just want to note that this is, like many issues, a long-standing one, and the commission weighed in some time ago to encourage a dashboard of DGS work orders, and that is moving forward. So there should be more transparency around the problems that exist and the timelines for resolving them. And hopefully that's a piece of the puzzle toward addressing this issue and keeping those work orders actually moving in a timely fashion.
In the timely fashion wound up to be around 7,000 back orders this year. So that's not timely, and it's not fashionable either.
Okay. So it does not look like, can we put the contact information shared by the councilwoman in the chat? I believe all of her, that was someone's question, but I believe all of her contact information is in the chat. Or are you talking about for Keith Anderson? Or for the feedback for Keith? Okay, we can get his email address while we're moving forward, if that's okay. You're welcome. Mr. O'Leary, thank you. I don't think there are any other questions at this time.
Thank you all.
All right. I don't see anyone from MPD on the call, and there was no hand raised. So going once, going twice for MPD. If you're here, please make me aware of it. Otherwise, we're going to keep moving forward. And my suggestion was going to be, I know there are 3 committee reports, but I'm going to ask, out of respect for the deputy director's schedule, that we allow Deputy Director Kirschbaum to speak, because she's been on the call promptly since 7, and I'm sure she has many other commitments. And so if it's possible, I'd like to allow her to go next, and we can come back to the committee presentations if you don't mind.
That's fine. Do we need to make a formal motion or?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay,
All right.
I'm fine with it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We're happy to have DDOT here, and we want them to come back. And I don't think keeping them on the phone all night is the way to do that. Would you please give Deputy Director the ability to share her, or to turn her camera on, please, Angie?
She does now.
Okay.
Terrific.
So you're off mute, and if you want to,
Yep.
there you go. There's your
Great.
camera.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks.
You're very welcome.
Excellent.
Welcome.
And thank you, Commissioner Palmer, Commissioner Roman. I'm grateful to be here. Do you want me to get started with, I know there was an agenda with a bunch of questions and themes. I'm happy to dig in. There were also some ad hoc questions that had come up earlier.
Yeah, why don't we lay the groundwork just a little bit, and then
Okay.
we can just have at it. So over the past several months, the commission, and this is more so for everyone else than it is for you, but we wanted them to know how you got here tonight and what we're talking about.
Sure.
So over the past several months, we've had several overarching sort of buckets of questions, let's say, about how we can best work with DDOT to accomplish the tasks at hand for the ANC commissioners on 4B. And so to that end, there are several bulleted items on the actual agenda. And some of those are also overlapping a document that was sent to the Ward 4 engagement, Ward 3 and Ward 4 engagement point of contact, which is Christian Pineda. So I think it would be best to jump right into the bullets on the agenda, because I think that covers the majority of that document. We got the document late in the day today, and so I don't know that all the commissioners, will have had time to absorb that. And so there might be a need to respond to something specifically, as it relates to a specific SMD at a later time. But I'd like to try to keep the conversation sort of broader and more about engagement between the 2 entities, if that's okay. And then also, one of my residents did have a question early on about funding. And so if we could talk about that too, I think that would be great.
Perfect. All right.
All right, the floor is
Thank
yours.
you. And thank you so much for inviting me. I know you had been in discussions with the director, and I do send his regrets. He is doing a lot of travel this month, and we were anxious to just have a chance to talk to you and give you some closure on some of the issues. So sorry to be here in his stead. I also just want to say a thank you. I know this team in particular is incredibly vigilant about putting things in 311. I know you guys are taking advantage of our dashboard and of Pave DC, and have been a great partner in terms of being our eyes and ears in the community for things that we missed or are not doing effectively. And we really do appreciate your input. All right, there was a bunch of questions. I'll get started. I know, actually, let me just do real quick on the infrastructure question that is not on the bullets, but I do want to, I don't know if the questionnaire can stick around for the whole thing. There is a considerable amount of infrastructure money that we are receiving from the federal government. And I'll tell you, there's 2 buckets. One of them are really formula grants that kind of plug into existing streams. So those will be going towards things like bridge repair, or actually a lot of Vision Zero safety issues, streams of funds that we already get. They're fairly prescriptive. We don't have a lot of flexibility on their use, and it's just a huge increase in terms of those resources. There's another bucket of funds that are the discretionary grants, and there is a considerable amount of funds. We would be competing with other cities and states for those. And the mayor created a Build Back Better infrastructure task force, and part of their charge is really to look at creative ideas for those applications. So DDOT has been sort of the technical experts. The director is spearheading one of those task forces, but Those committee recommendations are coming together, I think, at the end of this month, and that will help, I'm sorry, the end of July, and that will help direct where we as a city apply. Some of those things would be Department of Energy and Environment, or DENPED. It's not all necessarily DDOT, although I think a lot will be. And so that's kind of a to be determined. And I should say that there have been some public engagement sessions to get input. So while the task force is a range of the community and business leaders, they've also had some public forum as well. So I have not been very involved in it, but I just want to explain sort of what the plan is for the money. That task force will have recommendations, and then we would apply for it. All right, so let's get back to your questions. And I think we'll start with the first one about the high turnover of community engagement specialists. And I just have to say, like, I completely agree. It's incredibly disruptive to have the turnover. And one of the benefits of our community engagement specialists is that they actually become very familiar with all of you, with all the needs of the community. They are, for us, again, another set of eyes and ears. And so we lose that when we don't have that continuity. So we also want to keep our specialists there. Unfortunately, they're often rock stars, and they do have their finger in every pot in the agency and get recognized, and often do get promoted. But we decided to make a big change, because one of the challenges that you feel is that when you are dependent on a person and that person leaves, a lot of the information that they were working on may get lost. And a lot of the things were tracked, basically they would be getting emails and having conversations and tracking it through their spreadsheets and other ways. And it was just not great in terms of ensuring that there was some continuity or even just backup. So we designed a new system that will really help us track primarily ANC issues when we have meetings and there's any follow-ups. This tool is shared across the entire team of community engagement specialists, and all of us within the agency have access and can route the issues, get routed to the appropriate team for response. And even on our website now, for just general public who want to ask questions, instead of going to an email, it goes to a more generic form for the ward. So I think you'll see an improvement, that we won't be as dependent on the person, because even when they leave, we'll have an archive of all the issues so we can keep track of it. All right, and then and we also have, just as another backup, Christian has been your POC, but the community engagement manager, Kelly O'Nolson, is also someone that can always be here. But again, I think you'll see a change from that new tool. And then vis-a-vis resolutions, because I think that might be another thing that folks were worried about falling through the cracks. The ANC portal, I guess probably about a year ago, there was still resolutions coming through different front doors. They would often be emailed to our community engagement team or to the director. And we even set up, I think, email addresses for each ANC. We have now centralized, if all resolutions come to the ANC portal, again, a much better archive, things aren't getting lost. We do need you guys to use that as well. I think your crew does, but that's also helping us make sure that we don't, that resolutions don't ever fall through the cracks. So, so thanks for helping us make sure that those things, we can stay on top of it. Keep moving. The second question was really about some of the concern with the lack of transparency and action on the traffic safety investigation requests. And it sounds like the concern is, without that transparency, you as commissioners aren't able to advocate for things that are both, important and needed, or maybe what is not needed. And so I'll tell you, since we've moved to the new TSI process, we'll be the first to say that we are looking at this as an iterative process. There are pros and cons with it, and we are continually assessing how we can make it better. And as much as it's hard, we don't want to keep pivoting with a brand new process. We do plan to make some changes to it. So if you can stay tuned, we will come back, because I think we are going to make this process even better and address some of your concerns. In the interim, I do want to just reinforce things that we do have in place to help with some of the transparency. So as you know, and I know a lot of folks on the call do use the TSI dashboard, but between the dashboard, between the courtesy 10-day notifications to all commissioners when there's any vertical traffic calming, like speed humps or speed tables. And then we have the notice of intent, the NOI process for other kinds of changes to the traffic control or on-street parking. And then, of course, giving great weight to input from the ANC. But we do think that between those sort of 4 areas, we hope that while we're continuing to refine our TSI process, that you'll be able to be well informed. We also have made a change on the TSI dashboard that might help you guys know exactly what's going on, sort of for an entire SMD or even for the entire 4B. There's a new TSI lookup tab. So instead of having to kind of hunt and peck for each specific ask, it's a way that you can pull up all of them. And I don't know if it would be helpful to just show a quick, I can toggle to a quick view of what that tab looks like, if that would be helpful. If people are familiar and want me to keep moving, I can, but if you don't mind, I can spend just 30 seconds. I would just need, is Christian on as a panelist?
Is not on as a panelist, but he is here and can be promoted.
Okay, because he actually can pull it up really quickly. But if that's going to complicate things because he needs to get elevated to a panelist.
Give us a second. Angie, can you promote Christian?
Thank
please?
you. Sorry for not thinking of asking before.
That's okay.
Hey everyone, I'll share my screen real quick.
Thanks, Christian.
No problem. Thank you, Deputy Director. Okay, can you see the?
We can see your screen. Yes. All right. So now we're on the pending DDOT review tab. And if you want to go to the all TSI lookup. And I'm not going through this. I think you're probably familiar with the tool in general, but this last tab. So if you can see here, you can look up, and do you want to just do a 4B search? So this is a way just to get a snapshot of what's in the entire ANC. And actually, do you want to do a quick show of what we now have on the latest comments? So we had gotten feedback that there wasn't enough detail in terms of the status. And so we've added the comment that the DDOT employee would put in vis-a-vis sort of, if they've done the investigation, what the closeout plan is. It's the same text field that would come in to the 301 requester, but these are now archived here so you can see. And in this case, too, the last comment that we received it'll take 130 days to complete. It looks like this one actually has not been completed yet, so it doesn't provide much color, but some of them would say, we've investigated and we will be installing 2 speed humps, or we keep picking the ones that haven't had the inspection yet, the investigation yet. But anyway, but that's just an additional. Okay, hunting and pecking, but when the investigation has happened and there's a plan of action from a work order, that language would be in there. All right.
Oh, here's one.
Oh, actually, do you want to go to the pending installation? Right, I was going to say.
There you go.
That's probably a better way. Thanks, Sahar. All right. So in this example, it explains what the plan is. So I think that this is a much more useful snapshot. Commissioner Palmer, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the traffic safety investigation database. I think what we struggle with is when action isn't taken or a lesser action than what's desired is taken, and there's no explanation of why. And we've asked over years to be informed of the underlying data that's collected, and we never receive that. And we've in fact been told that we need to FOIA it if we want it. So I think for us, what's missing is when something is declined or the level of traffic safety infrastructure that we want isn't put in, why not? Because that's what we need to know to understand, and B, to potentially advocate for something more robust.
Or to explain it to the residents.
Yes, that too.
And I would think, just since we stopped for questions, I'll add this. The idea of not requiring residents to come to the commission before submitting TSIs, I think actually adds to your plate unnecessarily, because now you have multiple residents sending a TSI for the same block, for example, because they don't know that someone else has done it. They don't necessarily look at the TSI dashboard. They don't come to us because they don't have to. And I think that really is going to slow the process more so than it helps the process. But I'll turn it back over to you.
And listen, like I said, we definitely see the pros and cons. We know that you guys have insight about the community in a way that we can't. And so stay tuned. I think that there's many other challenges. We liked the fact that we could move quickly. We have done a great job at eliminating the backlog. Our team has, and we get great feedback from residents. But we do understand the fact that the ANCs add a lot of value to the process as well. So, so we're still noodling on a way to change things. This is literally just kind of in the interim. I wanted to show you what we do have available. The level of data. So as you can see, the tool is really, it's not built to have lots of data and information and, and copies of documents that you can pull down for it. I know that our practice is that it's really through a FOIA. I think part of it is just, even when data gets shared, it's not always intuitive. There's often then a lengthy back and forth then trying to explain things. So I understand exactly what you're saying, and that it's helpful if you have a very pithy explanation for why. And this tool is not the ideal way to do it, and also sharing voluminous data is not either. So noted, and I hope with our new process, we'll also be able to help work with you on prioritizing the most important things. And I think that's the thing that we're struggling with now, and that I think you guys would have best insight about what's the most needed. So, and anyway, so we're working on it. Give us a little bit of time. On the closure of 301 requests without action or explanation, I think it's probably tied a little bit to this, but I think a lot of the reason why things get closed out, and I'm hoping this gets better, has been getting better, the traffic safety investigation, and I think you all understand this, but I'm wondering if all residents are still confused. The request is for an investigation. And so it's really, we have 130 days to do the assessment. After the assessment, it gets closed out because that task was finished, and then typically gets replaced with a work order to do the work. We put in the 301 closeout that we are closing this out and creating a new work order, and we include the work order number so that the resident can track that. But oftentimes people see that it's closed out. If they're not looking closely, it feels like it was closed out without action, without realizing that we have to have a separate work order that gets sent to the implementing team. So I'm sorry, I saw someone put something in the chat about it. Okay, multiple ones. But I would say that we should not be closing out a work order without any information. I'm sorry, a 301 investigation. And we've been working on some more standard responses so that it's simpler for our investigators to put something in, but they really should be getting the new work order for the actual action. And again, I know that the comments will help too. If the resident doesn't look at it and just says, I just got that it was closed, at least the dashboard is another way you can follow up and take a look. And actually, it's not a bad thing for multiple, if we do get multiple requests for TSI in the same area. I'm just responding to the comment. I agree, it's often a way that we can also evaluate if there's a need for a broader community look versus just doing one thing at a time. So that is helpful information. On question 5, you had asked about the lack of responses to ANC resolutions and changing standards for ANC requests. So I think that part of this is just having, and I'm repeating myself a little bit, but just the ANC portal continues to be the key for us. And I know that in the past, DDOT said, use the email, do this. So we are centralizing it there. I'm really confident that that things will not get lost. When we get an ANC resolution through the portal, we send an acknowledgement letter within 10 business days, and that will have a tracking number. And then a formal written response gets sent within 60 business days. As far as I know, we have been living up to that standard.
Since when would you say you've been living up to that standard? Because we've, as a commission, faithfully put items in the portal, but we do not get responses.
And there's no response, or the responses aren't taking action.
There's no response. There's no acknowledgement from the portal.
I
mean, if we email so our process as a commission is to email the resolution to the appropriate agency point of contact, as well as submit it to the portal. Now, I'd say 99% of the resolutions are uploaded to the portal. There's an occasional resolution that we might not submit in a timely fashion because life happens, but the majority of our resolutions are submitted through the portal. We don't get responses through the portal. And lately we have gotten acknowledgement of the submission, but that is very recent.
I don't have a date for when that would have been happening, but I'd be surprised if in the past few months that you're getting resolutions sent.
To back Chair Brooks up on this, Resolution 4B 220501, May 26, 2022, doesn't have an acknowledgement letter or response. Resolution 4B 220301, Commissioner Brooks's resolution of April 12th, does not have an acknowledgement or a response. Like, it's like one of the advantages of the portal, and one of the reasons we've consistently used it since January of 2019, is it provides a level of transparency for our constituents about the work that we're doing and the responses that we get. And so I would just say that, like, it's clear that I think your standards are right? Like, I think ideally, like, an acknowledgement letter within 10 days and then 2 months to have a substantive response is a reasonable timeline, and it makes a lot of sense, and I'm absolutely supportive of it. I just don't just to support Chair Brooks on that, I don't think it's actually occurring.
So, and thank you, Commissioner Yates. And can you put in the chat if you know, so actually the one you mentioned, 4B 210502, is that one of the ones you just mentioned? I just want to make sure that we can track.
Yes.
Okay. 0501. All right. If you can just put in the chat the ones that you know of that are missing in any sort of follow-up, that would be great. And we'll take that back.
Those are just the latest ones. Like, you can go, like, there's dozens, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I should say that for ones way back, I feel like I can't fair. Well, in any case, we want to be responsive. There's things that are still missing. So if you have ones that you know of off the top of, pass those on and we'll make sure. This is news to me that there have been recent ones to fall through the cracks. So in fairness, so I overstated that we got it an airtight process. I need to go back and look into it. So thank you for clarifying that wasn't the case. There was a question about the inability to seek action on neighborhood-wide traffic calming. And I'll tell you, I think, appreciate that, that there are some interventions that really make more sense to be done in a broader swath than just a one-off. And that's one of the downsides of the TSI process, is that you get, sort of first in, first out, and we're kind of traveling all over chasing the TSIs, and that a more comprehensive approach probably makes better sense in many cases. So, our planning team is the one that really would kind of take the charge of those efforts. It's a different team, but if you can send us a resolution noting traffic concerns that are more broad, I think that would really help us. We don't have a huge budget for the neighborhood-wide studies, but knowing where your priorities are for those kinds of things would be really helpful. So please add that if you have not been doing that. in question 7, you asked about hardening of short-term traffic safety infrastructure. And we agree, flexi-post and pylons, they are imperfect in terms of sort of their stability over time. And I guess our first priority when it comes to a safety intervention is to do something, and those are fast and quick and cheap. But over time, they get knocked down. And so, you know, if we could wave a wand and have unlimited resources to harden all of them, we would. But we need to be intentional. Our budget is limited. And so we are trying to prioritize where we make those shifts, but we get the concern that it would be ideal if these were all hardened. We just can't commit to doing this in a really fast way across the city.
Before we move on to anything else, can I also add that while hardening might not happen, the installation of the flexi post with no maintenance, without our input, is frustrating, because we know that it's a temporary solution then. So if you've had flexi posts at a location, and we all know eventually they're going to break when the winter comes and snow gets plowed, and accidents happen in intersections where they exist, they need to be replaced. But they don't get replaced unless someone puts in a 311 request. And to me, there should be some responsibility for DDOT to maintain whatever it is they install without a 311 request. For me, I could understand, some fluke thing happens, and so we have to put in a 311 request. I get that. But to say we're not going to fix it, we don't maintain it unless you send us a 311 request, to me is disheartening. Because it's DDOT's job to know that they need to be replaced. It's not the AC's.
No, and I appreciate that, Commissioner Brooks. I know that's another question that you had also posed. Here's the reality. We could invest in a team of inspectors to do scans of the landscape and track things that are down and send those in. We have put more of our resources towards the installation versus the inspections, and it's a trade-off. But you're right, we do rely on eyes and ears. We rely on DDOT employees writ large, and we probably can do more to promote that, whether it's someone from our urban forestry team or whatever else. If you see it, say something, and we do, but it's not a formal maintenance plan in terms of observing when they go down. It's not like our street lights or traffic signals that send some sort of alert. I mean, it's really, you have to be driving by. And I still think emphasizing the staff on the installs is probably the right way, because we have such demand for installs. So I don't have a great answer for you. I get it. And I'm appreciative that you are vigilant and put the 311s in, but I don't see that. I'll tell you, on our sidewalk conditions, we are starting to use LiDAR, which is a way that we can just have it be, it's AI that will actually travel on and note when there's, bumps and gaps and routes that make it uneven. And so instead of having a clipboard and someone walking around, it's going to be a far more efficient way. I mean, it takes an incredible amount of time to do a sidewalk assessment the manual way. We're testing it out this summer, and it could be revolutionary in terms of those kinds of things. I don't know if in the future it could also pick up things like, where flexi-posts are, if they're not, I don't know, this is not my area, but I'm hoping that in the future we have other tools to do it, because it's not efficient to do manually, and we just don't have bandwidth.
I understand. Commissioner Yates, did you have a question?
Well, I was going to say that my understanding from traffic engineers I've spoken to is that DDOT's pavement assessment technology is capable of doing crosswalk and paint condition assessment as well. And it's just a matter of putting it in the mandate to the contractors to do it, but DDOT doesn't do it. Other major cities, I understand that Richmond and other places do that routinely as part of their pavement assessment, but that DDOT doesn't do it. Has there been any consideration of flipping the switch on that technology? Because we've noted that crosswalk deterioration is one of our major issues. It's one of the major complaints we get from our constituents. There's some that are in the list that we got a response to tonight, but dealing with them one-off, right? And waiting 2 years in the case of 1 311 request on that list is not an efficient way for anybody.
You know what? I will look into it. It's a good question. I was not aware that that's something that's we sort of have not opted in for. And again, you know, the contractor is still a manual. As far as I knew, the sidewalk assessment was done. I mean, we're trying the new technology now. So it's still, there's some level of inefficiency with a person with a clipboard walking around. But to add the street markings, yeah, I'm happy to ask to see if that's something we could do. And I should say that a lot of the street, oh, sorry, Commissioner Palmer, go ahead.
No. Were you finished with your thought?
No, I was just going to say that we have a lot of the street markings issue has just been a capacity thing in terms of expanding our contract. So some of the reason why that isn't getting repaired may not be that we're not aware of it. It's just that we have not had much capacity, and we're doing a bit of an overhaul on internal and external bandwidth so we can do more. It's been slow.
Okay, Commissioner Palmer.
Yes, I just want to go back briefly to the issue of hardening short-term projects. And we know that that can't happen immediately, that there might be limitations in terms of finances or capacity or something else. But I'm curious as to whether there are standards for when a project is eligible for or prioritized for hardening and what those standards are.
Off the top of my head, I don't know if I could say sort of certain types of roads or the amount of times it gets knocked down. I do know we have a team that's looking into that so that we can prioritize the need, but I don't have a description now of how we're going to go about it. And I'm also hopeful, it sounds like something council's also prioritizing in terms of adding resources for this. So both the money and then kind of what our plan of action attack is. It does not feel like it's too far off in the future.
Thank you.
All right, I want to get back to, so I know the questions of the 311 requests being closed without completion. If there are anything, yeah, I'm not, without the specific list or address, it's hard for me to know what happened. So if there's anything that you know of that you're still waiting to hear back on, if you want to just send or put in the chat specific ones, I can give you more.
I think that list is too long for the chat, quite honestly. I
Okay.
think you would be better served in, if you don't mind, sending that list to Christian, because even some of the ones that he said were completed, I don't believe are completed. So you'd be here all night if you put all of the
good.
ones in
Thank
the chat.
you.
So
I appreciate that.
Christian, I
And
hate to do it to you, but I'm going to ask the commissioners to send you a list of the 311 requests that they've entered that were closed without completion. We can try to compile it so that you just get one big list, but there are lots of them.
That'd be very useful. Thank you so much.
Okay. We have a Google Doc, guys, that we started a month ago. And so if you have updates to that list, if you want to add something to that, we can do that and then get it out to Christian in the coming days.
Okay, great, thanks. So there's a question about sidewalk gaps and sidewalk repair requests that are still open. And I'm going to start with sidewalk gaps because they're two very separate processes. And the sidewalk gaps, I want to give some context. We have about 2,200 sidewalk gaps throughout the city. And I think you referenced in one of your resolutions sort of what the way we prioritize that. So you're familiar, we're trying to refine the model because there's so much need and our ability to do them is fairly limited. Well, before I get to that, I just want to say that with our current budget, we can do about 11 to 15 segments a year. So 2,200, 11 to 15 capacity. And again, that kind of depends on the length and cost. So the good news is we are increasing our budget next year in 23. We're getting another 2 million. So we should be able to double the amount of segments we can do. Still not going to get us a huge number. And so we prioritize, and I think you're familiar with some of the variables. One is just if there's no sidewalk on either side of the street, because we are really by law required to pave one side. And so, but there are a number of segments that have neither side. We prioritize the proximity to schools, rec centers, senior centers. We prioritize when there's an important connection for high pedestrian traffic routes like public transit or some CBD. We are also adding some variables to prioritize areas with higher transportation needs, so under-resourced communities. And we're also looking at high injury corridors. And another thing that we're going to begin prioritizing is really just the higher functional class of road. So, you know, there's a higher safety risk on a principal arterial versus a local. So there's all these variables, 2,200 segments. We hopefully will have a way, you know, in the next 6 months to identify our plan of action for the next, you know, what's coming forward, the kind of the way we do the paving plan. Right now, we don't do that for segments. One of the key challenges, though, is that constructability is a huge variable that we need sort of the engineers to look at. So we can say, these are the top 50 segments. We put all the variables in, and the engineers look at it and will explain why it might not be viable. And it, you know, there's some grade issues, there's a number of things, and especially in terms of the segments that are left, a lot of them are incredibly challenging. So anyway, I know that the more information we can share, it's helpful for people to see what's coming. But there, you know, when it comes to missing segments, we got to just refine our model, and then have the engineers kind of do that overlay of what we can do. And then we hope to be able to share that so that, similar to the PAVE DC, it's not going to be a black box. But likely, if you've got requests in the queue, it's because we just have a long list. When it comes to repairs, I think you're familiar with the PAVE DC plan. Continue to submit if you'd like, because one of the variables for PAVE DC is like high frequency, you know, if we're getting 3-in-1 requests. But we do prioritize that really based on, you know, condition and complaints and whatever else. So if they're still open, it just means that it didn't make the cut, right? So we sort of are like, here are the top X that we can do with the money we have. And if your street wasn't on there, it was because it fell lower. So I'm not sure if that is satisfactory, because I know you want to get those repaved, but there is a method to it. And in some ways, anyway. Anything on that before I move on? Sorry, Commissioner
No. I believe the last item, are we at the last item, I think, which is the specific outstanding requests?
I have like a long list of questions, but you tell me which one you wanted to toggle to.
So I don't know how everyone else feels, but I think the specific outstanding requests might not necessarily, we might not be best served by answering those now. And again, everyone hasn't had an opportunity to read the document. So I appreciate that you responded, but I don't know that that's the best use of your time to review them one by one in this moment. Does anyone else disagree or have anything that they particularly want to ask about? Commissioner Bromagin?
Well, is it okay if I ask a question about a specific item at this time? Or
It
should I hold that?
absolutely is okay.
Okay, so one of the outstanding questions that I had that was sort of answered in the document, I just wanted to hone in on a little bit. And that is for the rehabilitation of Eastern Avenue, which is a longstanding project that we've had. And we recently had DDOT held a public meeting, I think last week, which was great. Appreciate DDOT doing that and all the additional info. My question is about sort of budget prioritization and how you queue projects. Because Eastern Avenue, I think, is on track to be about a decade behind when we thought, we were told it was going to be completed at this point. And so What we heard in the meeting last week is that the plan will be 100% completed next month, and that it is on track to be started. Construction is on track to start in FY26. So from the end of FY22 to 26 seems like a long time to wait for a project we've already waited for. And so I'm wondering why it takes that long to get to construction, and if it's impossible to move that forward, if that's just a money in the budget issue, or if there's something else that stalls that.
So yes, it is ultimately a budget issue. And you're right, I did just put the presentation in the chat for those of you who haven't seen it. There are a huge number of projects like this that are of importance to, to the residents who live in the vicinity. And we do submit requests through the mayor's office as part of our capital budget request. And we like to think we make a great pitch for all of them, and we do get a lot of resources for them. But unfortunately, the capital budget gets spread across multiple years. The safety issues tend to kind of get more attention right now, which is terrific. But it feels like there's still a lot of safety issues. And I know Eastern feels like it would be right for that as well. But I don't know, sometimes it's a money issue. Sometimes projects just in general, this isn't the case for Eastern, they get stalled for a variety of reasons. It could be we're back and forth with the National Park Service or utility. In this case, it really is just that the resources aren't there in our capital budget until FY26. So I'm sorry. I know that that's frustrating. I wish we could have more capacity to do all of it faster. But it's, the design is done. We have another bite at the apple for the next capital budget to see if we can do some jockeying, especially if one of the other projects has some delay. So I wouldn't say that it's like never going to happen before then, but in terms of the information we have now and when the resources are coming, yeah, that looks like our timeline.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So for those of us that have been on the meetings for the last couple of months, and we ended at 8 and 8:30, all of the street cred that I've built up, we're going to need tonight, because we're going to be here for probably another hour. So everybody get real comfortable. Deputy Director won't have to be here for another hour, but there are several items that are still on the agenda. And so I think this is a good point to wrap up this part of our conversation, sort of with an agreement that we all understand we need to continue a conversation between the commission and the agency, right? I think your coming tonight shows an effort, to repair the damage done between the two of us over the past years, hopefully, and we can work towards accomplishing what it is we are all trying to accomplish, which is ultimately safe roads and sidewalks for all of our residents. And so based on that, I would thank you for coming. I appreciate your forthrightness, if that's a word. It's getting late already. And I'm going to give you a chance, Evan, to answer the questions in the chat, to ask questions in the chat. But I just want to let everyone know, I think at this point, it's probably time to move on to the next portion of the agenda, which is all of the other DDOT presentations that we have, because, we don't have all night for anyone to be here.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
It was a pleasure. Appreciate the time.
But before you go, there are a couple of questions, and I'm going to defer to Commissioner Yates, who's going to read those questions.
Yeah.
And that'll be, after that, we'll move on to Christian's presentation.
The first one is from Commissioner Horn with 6B. Last fall at a meeting of the ANC Vision Zero Caucus, Director Lott said that DDOT would review and update the service level agreements that dictate the timelines for repairs for restriping crosswalks, repairing potholes or sidewalks, or down signs. Has that review happened? If not, does DDOT still intend to do the review?
So I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to. I do know that the division that does that work, we have done a huge deep dive, and we meet with them on probably, I guess, every quarter to go through 301 requests and their turnaround times and their operations and how they deploy staff. So we've been doing a lot of work with that team and have been actually seeing much better results. So yes, if that's the review that he was referring to, it's actually wasn't even a one-time review. I mean, we do continue to meet with the group. There've been a lot of staffing and leadership changes. So
Will there be an update to the SLAs, I think, to get to the heart of?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. So on the signs, one of the things we did, we really bifurcate safety signs from other signs. So we are constrained with what's in 311 in terms of how many different variables we can have. So I think it might only still have one. And this is really for street repair, street sign maintenance. But we have an internal SLA for stop signs of 3 days, even though the actual official 311, I think, might be 60 for any sign. I can't remember what it is, but I do know that, and we've tried to sort of maybe have it in parentheses. So we do, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question exactly, but we have higher turnaround times. We just don't always have an ability to differentiate the different types of signs within the 311 system. So the official SLA might still be the same, but we have some internal ones that are faster, depending on the type of sign.
Rabia Mateen says, how do you prioritize work orders? It seems to her like some communities take priorities over others.
Interesting. Work orders in terms of TSIs or just writ large?
I would assume both.
I mean, the spectrum of work orders is sort of tricky because there are different ways we do prioritize. It's hard for me to say just in general, because again, it depends on the nature of it. You know, if it's a safety issue, that's going to always take a faster precedent. If it is a traffic signal versus a street tree, I mean, depends on the nature of it, but each type has a different sort of set of ways that they're prioritizing. A lot of them are first in, first out though. So
and then I think most of the other ones have been answered in the chat or dealt with the chat. I see one more in the chat that I wanted to read, and then I see Commissioner Palmer.
Can I just ask a follow-up to that question? The SLA question. I'm sorry, I don't mean to intrude. Chair Brooks, is that okay?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
So I think like we see it physically that different neighborhoods look different. Like this is the challenge, is that it seems like there are priorities and it's based on neighborhood. And has there ever been consideration to like an equity review or something else in terms of how things are prioritized to kind of balance that out? I mean, you see that just walking around different neighborhoods, that some get more attention than others.
Yes, so I'll tell you in answer to your question of, are we looking at equity? Yes. And that was, I know exactly on the sidewalk gaps, that is one of the new variables that we're trying to put into play to make sure that those communities that have been underserved or have greater transportation needs get prioritized. But in general, for a lot of things that are first in, first out, I'll tell you, we found that some communities are much more vigilant about putting in 311s. And so we're struggling and trying to figure out a way that we can be proactive and not be dependent both on ANCs that are proactive or that on the residents putting in 311s. So we are looking into that as well. Because if we just do based on what comes in over the transom, it will not be equally, our resources are not distributed equally. So yes, it's a fair observation.
And then this is, I think, the final one that hasn't been addressed in the chat, and it was kind of a follow-up I had too. So I'm gonna, Julie Lawson wants to know, is there a concern that the Eastern Avenue design will need to change between now and FY26? I guess this is a similar, I had a similar thought, right? When you have a project that's 10 years old already, like how do you, obviously DDOT's design standards have changed, community standards have changed. How do you address that over years of change?
Yeah, I don't think that is why there's a delay, that there's an assumption that it's going to be updated.
I think the question is, how do you deal with it, right? Like, we are going into FY 23.
Oh, I see.
Right?
I
So we've
see.
got 3 more years in a project that's already 10 years old. How do you ensure that you're meeting modern standards after 13 years of time have passed?
Right. But because if we're at 90% now, we often do go back to the community and make other changes. Even if it's 90%, we can still make other changes. So in 2025 or 2026, I'm sure there will be more community engagement and another review to see what needs a refresh. We don't have to keep it locked down keep it in a locked archive for 5 more years.
Okay. All right. So I think we've covered all the questions.
You're tired of listening to me. I know it's been a long night. Thank you. Looking forward to those other presentations. And there will be Georgia Avenue is coming up next, right?
Yep, it is. So Christian, we're actually going to let you turn your camera back on and take over with the next presentation.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oops, I'm sorry. I muted myself. We can hear you and see you.
Awesome. So I'm actually going to have, I have 2 colleagues with me. I have Cynthia Lynn and Sanella Ardakani. They're going to be our presenters today. So I think they're on the chat or on the meeting already. So if you want to elevate them, and then we can get started.
All right. I just elevated Cynthia Lynn because my mouse happened to be on her name, but who was the other person?
Sanella.
Angie, do you see her?
I do not.
I don't either.
That's okay. I think Cynthia she'll be able to navigate it. If Sanella does come on, I can just let her know.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. So unfortunately, my laptop is not acting nice tonight and I can't show my screen, but hopefully you can all see the presentation.
We can.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you all for having me here tonight. My name is Cynthia Lynn. I was and am still the project manager for the Rock Creek East livability study, which was conducted back in 2019. And as part of that effort and as kind of part of the larger Georgia Avenue safety improvements, we wanted to provide an update on some of the recommendations that have come out of the study and really advancing that over the next couple months, if not year, and giving a quick update on where those are at, because we have not really touched base in quite a while. So I'll try to be pretty brief and we can kind of go back to slides. I also want to leave time for questions, but here's a quick agenda. We can give a little update on the overall Georgia Avenue safety improvement studies that are happening or recommendations. I'll give a quick update on the livability study, which was done back in 2019. We can walk through the 2 projects that are advancing along Georgia Avenue. So one is between Fern to Juniper and then Juniper to Eastern, and then kind of the next steps over the next several months. So as part of this fiscal year, DDOT did receive 1.7 million which was earmarked to advance improvements along the Georgia Avenue corridor. On the right, we do have this high injury network map, which does show a number of corridors and segments in the district that have been analyzed for different crash patterns, and Georgia Avenue definitely is highlighted as one of them and has been a priority for us when we are looking at equity and making sure that different parts of the city are being slated for improvements. And as part of that, the Rock Creek East 1 and Rock Creek East 2 livability studies have had, I think, 3 different projects, and those have been identified as ones that we're going to be advancing as part of the Vision Zero initiative as well, to eliminate serious injuries, fatalities within the district by 2024. So just as a quick overview, DDOT conducted a livability study back in 2019 for, I guess, essentially the 4A, 4B study area, which is really bounded by Eastern Avenue on the eastern side, Rock Creek East on the west, by Missouri Military on the south, and by the north as well. And so this study really seeked to identify opportunities to enhance safety and access for really all roadway users, especially ones that are vulnerable. And the goal was really to develop a more comprehensive approach to implementing traffic calming, safety operational improvements that were not just based on, people putting in DC 311 requests, but really looking at it holistically where the community saw issues day to day. And then we also back that up by data that we collected back in 2019. And those kind of came together, and that's how we identified this map where we essentially had different types of corridor and intersection improvements. And to this date, we have implemented the Piney Branch Road, bike lanes and safety improvements, which were done last year. We are still working with the developer at Walter Reed on making sure that they will be analyzing 16th Street in Alaska for the left turns, and then having better pedestrian crossing facilities and that kind of bus transit stop that's there as well. So tonight we'll be talking about Georgia Avenue North, which is essentially the segment corridor right here, and then the intersection of Alaska, Kalmia, Georgia, as well as Georgia and Eastern. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of both of the projects and just kind of go through some of the issues that we saw, some of the recommendations and the next steps for each. So for Georgia Avenue between Fern and Juniper, one of the main things that we saw as part of the livability study was the high number of crashes, suggesting the need to have better pedestrian safety improvements here. We did hear that a number of community members expressed concerns about vehicle speeds, the speeding at all intersection approaches and legs at Georgia Avenue, essentially. There were a number of challenges crossing the street and really conflicting movements between pedestrians and vehicles. There are lots of areas where the pavement markings are faded, the crosswalks are faded, the bus stop amenities aren't the best. And really there were some conflicts between the bus stop, pedestrian movements, and vehicle turns, essentially along the entire corridor. And so what we had in terms of recommendation back in 2019 was really to take a look at this more holistically and figure out ways to, reduce the travel speed by introducing traffic safety improvements, such as, high visibility crosswalks, narrowing some of the travel lanes, providing better transit facilities, such as potential curb extensions, or in kind of like in-lane bus stops, so buses don't have to pull over to the curb. We also looked at, essentially their bus landing pads, adding ADA accessibility to some of these crossings and ramps, and other improvements were like including stop signs or looking at potentials for hawks and RFBs along the corridor. And since then, so this was very much a very high level concept, and what Sanella is doing now, this is her project that she's taking over. We are currently working through preliminary design. We do have 30% plans at the moment, which we are still kind of internally looking at. However, we are going to be administering a notice of intent later in the summer, early fall, for 65% design plans. I'm sorry, and we will be looking to hear from community stakeholders, from the ANCs, for both of their support and any kind of comments that you might have. And then the next step between getting the NOI and receiving comments is advancing toward final design in 100%. And then we do have funding for construction in fiscal year 23, essentially. So this is on the horizon, and we will make sure that if we need to come back to talk through some plans or coordinate with stakeholders, we're happy to do that. And this is, Sanella will be leading this effort. So the other project that came from the livability study and really picks off of the northern tail end of the other project is from Juniper over to Eastern. And so this intersection itself had a number of comments about conflicts, specifically just because of the large and complex geometry of the roadway. Speeding was observed at most of the legs in the intersections. There's lots of conflicts between some of the right turn slip lane onto Alaska from Georgia. Also cars going northbound and trying to take a left onto Alaska, and the queuing kind of staging area has been difficult that we've heard from community members. Pedestrians have had difficulty navigating the intersection, not only because it's geometry, but some of the pedestrian crossing times are inefficient and insufficient. There were also a number of bicycle and vehicle crashes specifically at this location. So because of that, we did look at opportunities to enhance the safety of this kind of these two intersections by, kind of closing off any potential conflicts. So this right turn onto Alaska, we closed that to make it a pedestrian plaza where we could add some green infrastructure just to make it more of a placemaking aspect. Also, we did try to narrow some of the crossings for pedestrians by adding bulb outs at locations and other improvements such as high visibility crosswalks, wayfinding signage, and I think we also looked at restricting left turn vehicles from going onto Alaska. So as part of this, we tried to start bringing and advancing this to 30%, but there were a number of issues that we've identified. So we do have to coordinate with Maryland on some of the improvements on the kind of northern end of Eastern. This section, we did work with WMATA a little bit, and I think there were some conflicts with the bus turning movements. And then we did get the conversation started about maybe restricting left turns, but that does require a little bit more analysis. So as part of this specific project, we are currently scoping the design, essentially rescoping to advance the concept design. And this will include a little bit of more new data collection and analysis, but really working with the community a little bit closer to make sure that we're getting this design right. And that will happen between kind of the fall and the winter. And so we will work with the consultant on coming up with at least 2 different alternatives. And we will hold a community meeting probably later this year, early next, to kind of get people's feedback on what improvements could be made. And then from there, advancing the concept design and finalizing that. However, we do not have funding for final design and construction for this, but we will be looking for opportunities to kind of short-term improvements where possible, such as, if our analysis shows that we can just, restrict certain turns, or maybe at certain times of the day, we will try to do that as soon as possible, or other kind of temporary fixes until we can do something more permanent. So, my time is up. This is our contact information. Christian and Sanella are both on the line tonight, so we're happy to answer any questions, or if you want to shoot us an email, we're happy to follow up with any other information that we may have.
You. We will start with Commissioner Yates. I will add, though, if you don't mind, indulge me 1 second, Commissioner Yates. I appreciate the livability study, but I think someone else mentioned earlier, there was a livability study done for the Rock Creek area as a whole, and we've not really seen any outcomes from that. And so I might ask Cynthia that you come back, because I know you were responsible for at least a portion of that. I'm going to put a request in now to ask that you come back at some point to further discuss the Rock Creek livability study as well. If that's possible. We don't meet in July and August, so if we could have you come back maybe in September or October to talk about that, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, are you talking specifically about so there were 2, there was a Rock Creek 1, which was north of Missouri, and then Rock Creek 2, which was south of Missouri. So I'm
speaking about 2, because that affects my single member district.
Okay.
But everyone else would also be affected by 1. So perhaps we need to discuss both, but we can talk about that later and not take up everybody's time. Commissioner Yates, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Commissioner Yates.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming tonight. This project for 4B is almost, I believe it's completely within 4B01. So I appreciate appreciate you coming and presenting. I'd just say I would appreciate some sort of outreach prior to, other than the big meeting. Like, it would be nice, because I would, ensure, like, when we're on the agenda for a generic Georgia Avenue project report, like, I don't know if I should turn out my constituents or not, who's going to be the most involved, right? Like, Georgia Avenue is a significant stretch. So, like, knowing that it's in 4B01 helps us ensure that the appropriate people know that this is going on and can come and see your presentation, and things like that. I would just say that we are appreciative of traffic calming efforts, and I've been strongly supportive of traffic calming efforts. I would appreciate seeing any design progress, because it looks like the slides you shared are exactly the same as the livability study, right? There's no updated design in the slides.
No, yeah. So I think for essentially the message tonight is those are both advancing from the pretty pictures on a map to something more solid that we will be able to share in the next coming months, and working with you all on making sure that we're refining it in a way that makes sense now, given it's been a couple of years later, right?
So just two additional things. One was, and you can see it in the document that they sent for the prior presentation, the San Miguel International School is in the project area, has never had a proper safe routes to school assessment, does not have a school zone traffic calming. The crosswalk that they use at Juniper and Eastern has been on repair for 2 years. So I'd encourage you to plan a proper safe route to school, or for that school community, and work in cooperation with the school to ensure that the children there are affected positively by this project, because I think there's real potential there, and to move rapidly to do so, because it's been something that's been waiting entirely too long. And then the other thing is, like, I know you raised the cross-jurisdictional issues. I've put in this appeal to Montgomery County DOT when we got them to build the crosswalk across Blair Road, but it is unconscionable that they keep their segment of Blair Road that is bordered on either side by DDOT segments of Blair Road at a higher speed limit than the ones that traverse on both ends into DC, and anything you can do to get them to lower it to match the DC speed limits would have a significant traffic calming effect.
Okay, also, before you yield, would you mind answering or not answering, but reading the question in the chat? Kimmy Tignor asked the same question that she'd asked earlier, and I thought Deputy Director spoke to it a little bit, but if not, if she could be promoted to panelist again and address the question, I would appreciate it. Commissioner Yates.
You want me to promote her or read it?
I want you to read the question, and I want Angie to promote the Deputy Director if possible.
Can you give an example of the type of visionary projects that DDOT has for Ward 4 that they expect or are advocating be done, given the enormous once in 100 years worth of funding the federal government has authorized?
Unless Cynthia or someone else can answer the question, I thought perhaps we needed to have the Deputy Director come back up.
Hey, Commissioner. So the Deputy Director said that she's unable to speak because she's not a panelist. So I think
she's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
She should be able now.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Give me time to get back on. This was about the 100-year, like all of the new resources, Commissioner Yates.
Mm-hmm.
So the actual direction in terms of how we use those funds, again, I can give you the list on the formula funds where they're going, because we've got 3 bridges that are in poor repair. We have a bunch of new electric vehicle charging stations that we're working with DOE to get installed. So those I have a lot of insight about. On the new money that's the sort of discretionary, I honestly can't tell you until I see what the task force is going to recommend. And I also don't even know if we'll be fruitful in our applications, because ultimately we're competing with other jurisdictions for those. So I mean, we have vision, we know what we need to do. We've got big goals in Move DC, but in terms of these dollars, they're also 5-year dollars. This so to be realistic, people are often saying, pave over 295, these really dramatic projects that we could never actually use the money for because it needs to be spent within 5 years. So So anyway, so thing one, we're still waiting to get the report to see where we will be applying, but while they sound like big dollars when they're spread across lots of states and you've got this requirement to get it out the door in 5 years, it actually is not as transformative as I think people think.
There were some follow-up questions in the chat that just says, how do citizens who aren't city planners make these decisions? Will it just be paved roads?
No, I mean, that's not how we're spending the money in terms of the DDOT money that we control through the formula funds. In terms of what the task force is doing, thank you, Commissioner Palmer, for putting that in there. Oh, sorry if I'm speaking over you. I think you're on mute.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Did the task
No,
force
I had a
ask us
small
to-
child off screen. I'm sorry. If you thought
Sorry, are you waiting for another answer? Okay.
Did the task force ask you for plans? I think is the last question. And then after that, we're going to move back to the presentation. I just didn't want you to leave without getting the answer to this question. So.
Okay, no, that's fine. So we shared with the task force a bunch of projects that we, I put on hold because of a lack of resources that met the requirements of some of these discretionary grants. There's some that are about bridging communities that might have a highway that separates them. Even the grants you apply for, a lot of them have specific kind of areas of focus. So we did share with them some projects. And they did a tour of a bunch of sites as well. So we helped shape some of it. But I'll tell you, we were also realistic about the 5-year time horizon. And I think they're thinking of things that would take 2 years, 3 years to design. We'd never get the money out the door. We want them to think big, because even if we can't use it for these resources, it's good for us to have that input, for other sources of funds. So they're thinking big. I don't need to diminish it, but.
So Kimmy, do you give me permission to give Christian your email address offline and they can follow up with the specifics that you're asking for? And okay, thank you. And Christian, if you could make note of her specific questions, that would be great. And then, I can connect the two of you in an email shortly.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Okay. Commissioner Yates, I'm sorry about that. I just didn't want to lose the deputy director. So was Cynthia able to respond to your statement and give you what you need, or do we need to double back to your statement?
So I would I would like to ask about the San Miguel School and just reiterate once again that advance notice of the scope of the project would be helpful so that we can ensure we engage the right people.
Okay.
Great. I was going to ask you what the name was. I know that I have it now, and I will make sure Sanella and I reach out to them as part of this project as we advance toward design, to make sure that they're at least in notice and we can incorporate any ideas that they might have.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Did any other commissioners have questions? Nope, I think we've covered all of them. Okay, then at this point, we can move to the next DDOT presentation, which would be Thomas Pipkin and Kimberly, is it Vaca? I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If not, feel free to correct me. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead to number 9. We're actually on number 8, which is the Metro Branch Trail Project. So we actually need to hear from
Samir.
Samir. Yeah, Samir. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure I was on the right line. From Samir.
No, yeah, you're fine. I'm here.
Okay. So the floor is yours.
Sure. One second. Give me 1 second. Let's figure out my camera. It's not like it doesn't work. So the camera is not working. So is that fine with that?
Angie, do you need to give him permission to have his camera on?
You should have co-host permissions right now.
Okay, try one more time for me.
Yeah, I'm trying. Give me 1 second. That is not working. Yeah, it's good.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. Give me 1 second. Just set this up quickly. Yeah. Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Halamdi. I will be presenting the Mid-Branch Trail from Blair Road to Bunny Branch Road design. So I'm gonna start with the process and the schedule for this project for preliminary design. So this project starts with the alternative analysis in January 2022, and we are actually right here the preliminary design, which started at April 22nd, and will continue all the way down to at the end of this year. And after that, we'll be going to intermediate design, which is the 65% design, and then we'll go to final. So technically, we are now at the preliminary design, which is part of that. We'll be developing the plans and environmental investigation and review for the project limits. And also, we have some right-of-way tasks to acquire impact properties, which is we involve some like acquiring some property from some stakeholders along the project limit. We'll talk about more in detail in this presentation. So the project limit is we split the project to 6 segments. The segment 1 start from Bunny Branch Road, which is the section right here, and then move to segment 2, Bunny Branch Road to Chestnut, with this segment right here. And the next segment, segment 3, which is Chestnut Street, which is the yellow right here, and also segment 4, Springfield, all the way down this segment. And we move to segment 5, 3-4 Cedar Street. It's the alley section. And segment 6, 4th Street, and Widgery Street, all the way down here. That's the whole segment 6. Okay. So previously we did some engagement analysis for this project. We start with public meeting on December 7, which is we show some different alternative for each section. And we host that meeting on December 7, and we ask public, we share all those alternatives between all the people who joined that meeting with different in breakout sessions. And also we had an online survey, and we had almost 81 responses for all these alternatives. And the next outreach we did for this project as well, the preliminary engineering report, which is we did some analyzing for all these other alternatives we have, along with the input we received from public. And based on our analysis and reviews, we come up with the recommended alignment, and we present them on the meeting June 7th for the recommended alignment. I will go briefly about those alignments, but if you want more details, we have the full presentation on the project website with all the details, recommended alignments. So I'm going to start with segment 1, which is Bunny Branch Road. The recommended alignment for this section will be 4-foot two-way protected bike lane on the south side, which is as shown in this image. We do protected bike lanes connect all the way down to Chestnut. And segment 2, Bunny Branch Road to Chestnut Street, which from Bunny Branch we go up on 10-foot multi-use curvilinear path with a staircase 5% slope max, which we're gonna have a ramp loop around all the way to Chestnut with a staircase coming up on halfway, which is once you get here will be like more flat. So to Chestnut Street. Segment 3, Chestnut Street will be like a neighborhood bikeway, will be a shared bike with vehicles along Chestnut, keeping the parking both sides, and we just be sharing the bike with traffic. The next segment, which is segment 4, Spring Place, recommended alignment, Warnoff with Joker, same thing, will be a shared bike with vehicles all the way to 3-4 Cedars Alley. The next segment will be 3-4 Cedar, which is the connection from Spring Place all the way to Cedar Street, will be like a 12 feet multi-use path, 5% slope max, retaining wall on both sides. So that will be the section to connect between Spring Place to Cedar Street Northwest. Segment 6, Cedar Street, 4th Street, will be the recommended alignment for that will be once you leave from the alley all the way to Cedar, we'll be having like a cross bike ramp with a bike like crossing all the way down to 4th Street. We'll continue on 4th Street with 2 protected bike lanes all the way down from Cedar to Butternut Street, all the way down to Aspen, same thing. Which we're gonna have like only one side of parking, and the other side will be like a 2-way protected bike lane. And all the way down to Whittier as well. So we'll continue the same with only one-way traffic going down south. And here's I'm showing the cross section for the bike lane will be 5 feet each way for the bike lanes and 11 feet driveways with 7 feet parking lanes. So we'll be losing parking along 4th Street on the east side of the 4th Street. And lastly, for segment 6 will be Whittier's. That's where we'll be connecting the Whittier with Blair Road, which we're gonna have like a 8 feet sidewalk with a 5 buffer, and then we direct the traffic all the way down. I mean, the bicyclist on the road to connect with Whittier, which we have a 10 feet shared path with 6 feet buffer. And this connection will connect between the baby section from Fort Allen to Tacoma, which will be in construction hopefully at the end of this year. So that will be the connection between Mid Branch from the baby sections to the new section, which is now it's in the preliminary design. And so here's, if you have any more questions, response, please reach out to the project team for Mid Branch Trail, which is cover all the section. The one is completed at Fort Totten, and now the section between Fort Totten to Tacoma, and which is now the new section now we're doing from Blair to Piney Branch. So our next step will be finishing the 30% design. So now, since we had the alignment been recommended, now next step will be like develop the plans, which now you're going to see all these segments on the plan sheets, and we'll be uploading for the project website, Mid Branch Trail. Once they're completed, we're looking at end of 2022 to develop the first phase of the design, which is the 30%, which we're looking for. Once we develop, we're looking for more input from public for those plans. And we'll be continuing doing some environmental review and if we move forward the 30% and environmental will approve, and NEPA will be moving to 65% design into 23, and we're looking to complete the final 100% at the end of 2024. Thank you very much. Questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm not sure I followed this, but I think there's been a change in terms of the portion that's on 4th Street since the last presentation we saw in terms of loss of parking. And I just want to make sure I understand that for purposes of communicating with residents. I think there's additional parking loss, but I'm not sure I'm following the plans, and I just want to make sure I understand what the current status is.
Okay, so 4th Street, we have parking on both sides for 4th Street.
Yeah.
So in order to add the bike lane, we have to take about 10 feet of the width of the road. So we'll be losing parking only on one side of the street along 4th Street. So let me just go back. So if you look, that's the current, like the parking we have between 4th Cedar to Butternut. So the same thing gonna happen for between Butternuts to Aspen and Aspen to Whittier. So that's all connected. And you're gonna lose parking only on one side of the street, which is which is on the east side of the road.
Is that any different from the last version of the plan? And what about south of Whittier?
South of Whittier, we're not losing any parking because we're having that side will be a shared path. We're running on the sidewalk into behind the curbs, so the parking will stay in Whittier's. You're not losing parking in Whittier's. The only place you're losing parking only in 4th Street.
Okay. I thought there was discussion of east-west on both Whittier and Van Buren, and I just thought there was more to this, but I will follow up separately about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will just add on to that. I was in that last meeting and I thought there was a discussion about both Whittier and Van Buren, right? For the purposes of connecting. Is that no longer on the table at all?
No, Van Buren is still on the table. So we thought about for Mid Branch to have only one route to connect Mid Branch as having two options from Van Buren and Whittier, but Whittier is still happening, but under different like separate contract. We'll do Van Buren as well, but not under this project. The project will be eliminate Van Buren from Mid Branch Trail, but will be done and separate like contract. So we're still having Van Buren's happening, but not under Mid Branch project. So will be being done separately. Because we saw the public requesting the one Van Buren and Whittier we felt is more like recommended for like it's more beneficial for Mid Branch to have. So we thought to do Whittier under Mid Branch project under Mid Branch, and we do Van Buren separately in a separate contract or project, which will be happening anytime soon. So we're still having both considered as DDOT. That's why I didn't present it. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, were there any other questions? But I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I guess I'm just confused by that because that's not the way I understood the presentation at the last public meeting. But I'll like Commissioner Palmer, I'll follow up offline about my confusion on that.
Yeah,
I just add if we can keep the lines of communication open, because I don't think we were even directly informed about the last meeting. So I missed that one, but we will follow up on that.
So the decision was made like after the meetings to like separate Van Buren from Whittier. So that will be like that's why we came to that meeting as well, to present it and let you know Van Buren will be separated from this segment of the project and will be done separately.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right. So next we have presentation with regard to the art in the right-of-way installation at 5th and Dahlia, and that's Thomas Pipkin and Kimberly Vaca. So if we could elevate them, I would appreciate it.
Hello, good evening. It's Tom Pipkin.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Is Kimberly here?
She's coming up.
There. Okay, she still doesn't see her panelist request.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
All right, thank you so much for having us. My name is Kimberly Vaca. I have not presented to this commission before. I am a transportation planner with DDOT and the neighborhood planning branch, and I work on arts in the right-of-way, as well as I'm the streetery coordinator for the district. So you may have heard of me working with restaurants in your community. We've prepared, along with Tom, a brief presentation for you all tonight regarding an upcoming ground mural installation in your neighborhood. So is it possible for me to share my screen? Lovely, okay. So make this smaller. So brief history on what Arts in the Right-of-Way is. This is a new program at DDOT that started within the last 2 years that has grown rapidly since projects have started to go in. Essentially, it facilitates art in the public right-of-way on public amenities and facilities such as bike racks, utility boxes, and pedestrian areas. You can see a list of the different opportunities for this program on our website here, which I put a link on this slide. But the type of project we'll be talking about tonight is a closed roadway mural, which is a great segue from the previous presentations from DDOT earlier tonight about livability and safety studies. This is kind of the next leg of those installations about what's possible in these spaces. So we're following up on a location at Blair Road and 5th Street Northwest, which is the Piney Branch Road Northwest Traffic Calming Project recently closed off this area through tactical improvements such as flex posts, creating a safety improvement in a new pedestrian area in this space. And what our team does in the neighborhood planning branch then basically comes in and tries to work with the community on developing and creating these spaces to be more attractive through art. So we secured funds this year for this fiscal year for a ground mural at this intersection, which we've then used to hire Pipkin Creative and Tom, who will introduce shortly, to conduct community outreach, such as through this event, to help develop a design for a ground mural, and also use local artists to design and create that ground mural, which must be designed and installed by the end of this fiscal year, September 30th, 2022. So I'll go ahead and pivot over to Tom, who will go over his plans for this project.
Thanks, Kim. I'm going to review sort of the design process and installation phase for these murals. Last year, we installed 8 surface murals throughout the city in a variety of neighborhoods. I was also involved with a pilot program the year before to activate some so-called dead spaces that were no longer being used by cars or pedestrians. These murals are almost universally appreciated by the public, so it's really a positive process for our team and the artists. We focus on local artists and connection to the community, and I'm going to go through some of the past images from last year and describe what the significance of those murals are and how we arrived at that design. We typically dig into the history of the neighborhoods. We look for historical markers in the area. We look for historical places and stories. And we also try to engage with stakeholders as much as is possible in a design process like this. And part of that involves ANC meetings like this. It involves being in the neighborhood and talking to people as they pass by. And it involves knowing the city and these communities. I've been a resident of DC for 30 years and have done a variety of art and culture projects in the last 10 years. So one of the things my team brings to the table is knowing who the artists are and knowing the history of these neighborhoods and really striving to make a connection with the art that we're putting on the ground. The installation phase, once we have a design that's approved and liked by as many people as we can get to give us a thumbs up. Keep in mind, art is subjective. We can't please everybody, but we really do our best. And part of that is part of that success is in the types of designs that we choose to install and that we arrive at. The actual installation phase takes about 5 to 7 days. This location at 5th and Blair will probably be closer to 4 to 5 days because of the shape of it. And it's sort of in a protected space, which allows our artist teams to work a little bit faster as opposed to moving to 4 corners and kind of juggling different spaces and resetting up cones and safety installation stuff so that the artists are safe while they're painting. These murals, of course, are put in place as a temporary placemaker and placekeeping design while the plastic pylons that you see installed are preceding the hardscape that follows, could be several years later. That's really a question for DDOT on the timeline of some of these. But in the meantime, we use a paint process that we've been working on and researching over the past several years that is extremely durable. It's not your typical exterior paint. We pressure wash the surface. We use the best paint in the industry. It's a Sherwin-Williams product and also a Street Bond product. And then we also clear coat it with a sort of resin, clear resin that also helps to protect it. We can go to the next slide. Well, actually, this image that can we go back? The image that you're looking at here is an example of a mural that we put in at 18th and Newton Place in Mount Pleasant by artist Cesar Maxit. This area is extremely close to a sort of commissary and store facilities for the Nacotchtank Indians, whose land we currently live on. And we wanted to reference their history and culture in the neighborhood. And artist Cesar Maxit chose to focus on the indigenous acorns and mushrooms that grow in the Rock Creek Park area adjacent to this design. And if you see on the top part there, that's actually a repeating sort of wallpaper pattern. He calls it street paper of Indian heads and arrows, of which many were found in that area. Next slide, please. These are some other examples of work that we did last year. Alma Thomas was an extremely well-known in some communities, artist and teacher in the Shaw neighborhood. And this installation was at 15th and Church Street Northeast. And we discovered that Alma Thomas lived just a few houses down. Alma Thomas was the first graduate of the Howard University School of Art in 1922. She went on to teach middle school art at Shaw Middle School for several decades. And then in her 70s, was able to present and be featured at the Whitney Museum of Art in New York and had a solo show. We wanted to represent her art and her legacy by that design there on the left. The next one is recognizing the U Street rich history of jazz and music of the U Street corridor. This is a four-corner mural by artist Luther Wright, which really highlighted the diversity and vibrancy of the U Street corridor. Next slide, please. 14th and Meridian Place was a really kind of groundbreaking and pioneering project that we did. We had a local poet who goes by the name of Mazare we commissioned her to write a poem about the neighborhood and about Vision Zero and about pedestrian safety. And she wrote a really beautiful, eloquent poem. And then we worked together with artist Rosie Sunshine Galvan to create a mural that reflected elements and ideas of this amazing poem that Mazare wrote. We're really proud of that one. And there's a video of it on the DDOT website that you can watch Mazare reciting her poem on video in the space there at 14th and Meridian Place. Next slide, please. New Hampshire Avenue and Newton Street. This is by Juan Pineda. Sometimes big and bold is just fine. And in this particular neighborhood, we wanted to go with a playful, big geometric pattern. As you might see in the previous examples, we do still have a mandate to create eye-catching designs. They cannot have any words or letters on them by way of federal highway standards in streets. So we went to Juan Pineda, who has a very iconic and eye-catching aesthetic with this really beautiful repeating pattern here. Next slide, please. That might be the last one, and that is the last one. So I hope you guys found that enjoyable. These are really special murals, and we really tried to do our best to engage with the community and create something really meaningful for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a plan for what Fifth and Dahlia would look like? I mean, it was great to see some of the other locations, but that doesn't give me an idea of what you plan to do at that intersection.
Well, we're in the research phase right now. I'm talking to artists. I actually live very close to this site. I'm at 9th Street. This is ANC 4B is my ANC. I'm at 9th and Highland. So right around the corner from this location, coincidentally. So we're looking into themes and aesthetics, and we welcome your feedback. If you all would like to reach out directly to Kim or drop some comments in the Q&A, we will, I'm happy to reflect on any and all designs that folks want to offer. Tacoma and the Tacoma neighborhood certainly has a leafy, heavy floral, and I know Tacoma Park, Maryland has the Tree City moniker, Azalea City, I think. So there's we're potentially looking at some floral patterns and some heavy on the nature with some bright pops of color and flowers. We can't get too detailed in the design based on the surface and the materials that we use, and we don't do portraits of people for a number of reasons. So we do have to keep it kind of big and bold, but by all means, please send any and all recommendations for us to run through. We do have till September to complete this. We anticipate that this will be done probably by end of July, early August, pending an approved design.
Commissioner Yates.
Yeah, first of all, I'm glad to see this project finally realized, especially after the TPB grant went sideways that was originally going to fund it. I do want to encourage That's a very quick timeline, and I know we're in a weird space with the school year, but the Tacoma Elementary that's right there is an arts-focused program, and I would encourage outreach to that school. There's also a daycare and a historic church that are both located right on that corner that I think would be good points of outreach when we talk about design that reflects the community. But I especially want to encourage the involvement of the students at Tacoma, if at all possible.
Thank you. Yes, I'm familiar with that location right there. And we have some other projects going in Southeast where we're engaging with schools to create some fun, really more kid-centric elements. And it may be possible that Fifth and Blair is a good match for that as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I see there's a question in the chat. I can answer. Would you?
Sure, go ahead.
Great. Okay, so the question reads, what is the DDOT process for identifying new or additional locations for service? So as part of this effort, basically for arts in the right of way, we look at safety mobility studies like near Northwest 3 that was recently completed and other livability studies that result in curb extensions to be installed. We typically like the curb extensions to already exist before we come in, but we also have worked with communities to identify spaces that have upcoming curb extensions to install murals in. So it depends on basically projects that have already been approved and installed or pending installment. But if you have suggestions, please send them to me and I will facilitate that discussion with our team.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Just had a quick question just for clarification. Do you also work with the playable arts projects or are you strictly just the street murals?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
No,
All right.
I'm not familiar with the Playable Arts project either.
Okay, thank you.
The one more follow-up is I wanted to ask, when you say local artists, do you mean from the Tacoma community or do you mean broader DC, or how do you define that when you talk about finding
to the neighborhood when possible? Cesar Maxit, for instance, at the Mount Pleasant location lives in Adams Morgan. So when possible, and I haven't finalized the artist for this location. So again, if folks also know local artists that they would like to submit for potential collaboration on this, we're happy to look at that. It is a specific process, but we have a lot of experience doing these and can kind of mentor and coach artists who may not have ever worked with this medium. So when I say, well, local is first of all DMV, like we're not bringing in people from New York or out of the area, first of all. And as hyper local as we can get is the goal. It's not always possible, but we do a pretty good job.
All right, thank you very much.
Commissioner Brooks, while I have mentioned on your time, I do want to just note, as the street coordinator, we just got the green light to come out to ANCs for the draft streetery guidelines for a permanent program. So commissioners, please be on the lookout for an email from myself to participate in for us to receive feedback on those guidelines in July. So I want to throw that out there in advance.
Okay, we do not meet in July or August, but
right,
September, wide open.
We're hosting an information session. So just
okay. Wonderful. Thank you. All right, so next on the agenda is Alice McFarland from the DC Office of the Tenant Advocate. Let's see, is Alice in the attendee list? There she is.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for waiting so patiently.
Thank you for inviting us this evening. Were you able to also promote my colleague, Christopher Lucas?
Sure.
Thank you so much. While you're bringing him in, I'll just briefly introduce both of us and just tell you all thank you for inviting us and allowing us to be a part of your agenda. I have had the pleasure of meeting Erin Palmer during her campaign, and I now consider her a friend. She has taught me a lot, and I am happy to be a part of your agenda this evening. So this is my colleague, Christopher Lucas, as well.
Hello, Mr. Lucas.
Hello, and thank you to ANC 4B
and your constituents.
Nice to have you.
Let me share my screen. Give me 1 second.
Mhm. There we go.
All right, thank you so much. So I am Alice McFarland. I'm one of the program analysts with the Office of the Tenant Advocate. I'm here just to share briefly with you all to introduce us to the ones who do not know us and reintroduce ourselves to our fellow partners. So my name, sorry. So we are the Office of the Tenant Advocate. And I'm here to share with you who we are and how OTA can work for you. OTA was created in 2006 as a division or part of the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. In 2007, OTA became an independent agency. And since its inception, we have been under the leadership and direction of Chief Tenant Advocate, Johanna Shree. OTA, our mission is to advise, educate, advocate, and assist tenants that live in the District of Columbia, not only about their rights and responsibilities, but also how they their rights when it comes to the landlord-tenant relationship. How OTA does that is we have 4 departments. We have the legal branch, education and outreach, policy advocacy, and emergency housing. When a tenant contacts the OTA hotline at 202-719-6560, they are assigned either a case management specialist or an attorney advisor, depending on the nature of the case, the order will receive, and availability. The legal branch primary purpose is to handle disputes when it comes to landlord-tenant relationships. The purpose of the education and outreach team is to educate and inform the tenant community about tenants' rights, responsibilities, and rental housing matters. We do that by asking ANCs to be, a part of the agenda. We do community outreach events. We have webinars and trainings where we provide information on topics such as renters' rights, Lease 101, Tenant Association, TOPA, which is Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, and evictions. We also have reference materials located on our website, which is ota.dc.gov. We have the Tenant Bill of Rights, housing regulation and forms, and eviction lists. Emergency housing, in the case of a natural disaster, such as a fire, flood, or if DCRA deems a unit unsafe or inhabitable, we offer temporary hotel accommodations, financial assistance, storage assistance, and we also coordinate with other government agents and community-based organizations to ensure that displaced tenants are provided the necessary resources. We also have monthly renters' rights trainings that are conducted every 3rd Thursday. We have YouTube tutorials, posters, flyers, and forms available. We also provide training with tenant associations and TOPA. Now that a national pandemic health emergency is now ended, evictions are now prevalent and open within the District of Columbia. Tenants are evicted may be evicted for one of 10 specific reasons. The most common reasons for evictions in the District of Columbia are non-payment of rent and lease violations. All tenants being evicted for a lawful reason in the District of Columbia must receive a written notice with various requirements, including the reason for eviction. A tenant who is being lawfully evicted in the District of Columbia has the right to receive a written notice from the landlord describing the reason for eviction, a notice of the landlord's intent to file in court unless the action is for a lease violation. Tenants also have the opportunity to cure or correct if the eviction is for a lease violation. So for example, if a tenant has a pet and the lease says that they cannot have one, tenants have the opportunity to correct it prior to eviction. Tenants also have the opportunity to challenge the landlord's claim in court. If the eviction is for non-payment of rent, tenants have the opportunity to avoid eviction by paying the full amount of rent. In order to evict a tenant in the District of Columbia, all landlords must go through the judicial process. Oh, sorry, something happened. It's not allowing me to move.
That's okay. Just keep going.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Even if we can't see it.
You can't?
We're on the page that says eviction prevention. But if
Okay.
you can't scroll to the next page, then just keep going with your presentation and we'll follow you verbally.
All right. Okay. 1 second. Okay. So, all right. So, 1 second. So, okay. In order to eviction, tenants must go through. Okay. In order to evict, a tenant must go through, and landlord must go through the judicial process. Okay. If the judicial process includes that tenants. Oh, goodness. So because
you need your slides, like you can't even see your slides yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
If you like, I can kind of help.
Yes, go ahead, Chris. Take over.
My colleague at this point. I formerly was with the legal division since the inception of the Office of the Tenant Advocate. So this part is the easiest part for me. And basically the judicial process means that the landlord first has to provide a written notice, proper written notice to the tenant. The tenant, okay, and then it's here. If the landlord fails and wins in the process, and I can't see everything.
Okay, I have it. I'm sorry. If a landlord, and we only have a few more slides, but thank you for your patience, everyone. If the landlord prevails and wins possession in an eviction case, the court issues a writ of restitution, which means that they have a legal, which is a legal order that permits the landlord to take possession of the rental unit back from the tenant. In the District of Columbia, all evictions must be scheduled and conducted by U.S. Marshals. Self-help evictions are illegal when a landlord changes the locks or removes a tenant's belongings from the rental unit without the presence of a deputy United States Marshal. That means that they are performing an illegal activity and it is prohibited. Tenants have the opportunity to contact the local authorities, which is MPD, as long as they can provide the proof that they live in a unit to gain re-entry into the unit. So for example, tenants can show their ID, which has or driver's license, would have the same address of the unit. If they have a piece of mail, because I'm quite sure tenants don't walk around with their lease, but if they have a lease, that's also a way to regain entry. If you are at risk of eviction for non-payment of rent, you have 1 of 3 options. Apply for emergency rental assistance, request a payment plan from your landlord, contact OTA's hotline, which is 202-719-6560. If you are at risk of eviction for a lease violation, please contact OTA's tenant hotline, which again is 719-6560. If you or someone you know needs our assistance, please do not hesitate to contact us at either our hotline, again, 202-719-6560. We also have, we're on Instagram and Twitter at OTA@DC, and our website is ota.dc.gov. Thank you for allowing us to present. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we are available for any questions.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions? We'll just go in numerical order. Commissioner Yates?
Wanted to ask about the current status of the eviction moratoriums. They're pretty much done for, right? Like evictions have fully resumed in the District of Columbia. And has there been a surge in usage of OTA since that's happened?
I can answer that question. The moratorium is over. Thankfully, at least knock on wood, the evictions have not skyrocketed in the way that we predicted or thought. And that may be because of the efforts of the city in getting the state DC program was definitely utilized, to say the least. and ERAP has also been funded. So though the evictions they have not skyrocketed, they're actually in a regular path. But we still do anticipate, because of market conditions, we do anticipate evictions to possibly increase. That helps a little bit.
Yeah, I'll go next. So this is not so much a question, but I would love if you have flyers or pamphlets to get some of those, because I think they're a great community resource and we can put them out in neighborhood areas.
You can, I would recommend you can either do, you can definitely take my email or Ms. McFarland's email. We'd be happy to produce those types of materials for you all, as well as for tenants that are attempting to associate. We're launching a program, a peer mentoring program, where we're taking well-established tenant associations and putting them with tenant associations that are upstart. So that's one of our programs that we're concentrating on. The eviction prevention program is kind of the main thing, but like I said, luckily at this point, that has not been as dramatic as we thought. And also I would say with DCRA and also the Attorney General getting the housing stock and getting the housing stock and more inspectors, we think that that's another reason, because with the council's support, landlords were prevented also after the moratorium for evicting if they had outstanding housing code violations, and that has probably slowed things down as well.
I
But
can
yes.
ensure that you get that information, Aaron, as well as to piggyback on what Chris is referring to as far as the tenant association. We also have like door tags in which we now are providing to encourage tenants in all tenants really to form tenant associations, just so we know that you can get more done. There's power in numbers, so you can definitely get more done with more people.
Great.
We have two sets of door tags. We have the ones for every individual tenant as well as for tenant associations when we go out, because like Ms. McFarland said, we do virtual as well as in person.
Great. We'll take all of it.
Do you want my email here or
I got it.
It's in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the tech guy, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much for your presentation. Great job. And hope to have you back in the future. And I'm sure that you're going to get that information to Commissioner Palmer and we can get it from her.
Invite us as you will, and we'll show up.
All right.
Thank you.
You're
All
very
right, thank
welcome.
you.
Have a great evening.
You too.
You all have a great one as well.
All right. So we're almost down to the end. We got a few more presentations. Hang in. This won't be the meeting where everyone's lauding us for the quick turnaround. Dr. Guard, how are you this evening?
Hi, how y'all doing?
Good.
Happy to I'm gonna try to make this as exciting as I possibly can. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Ariana Guard. I'm a developmental psychologist at the University of Maryland, College Park. This is a project that we actually didn't start too long ago, so I'm hearing lots of comments about timing of reporting and things. So we're hoping that we're reporting back to folks with some relatively quick timing. If you're tired and you just want to go to sleep, I'm just going to put up at the very beginning. We're having two events. We would much rather come and see everybody in person, and then we're having another virtual event where we're talking about these things. Each of the ANC commissioners here, you are going to receive some of these flyers in the mail, so you should get those in the next couple days. So the purpose today is to tell you a little bit about how the project has been progressing, and we really want to tell you about what the next step is, because ANC 4B has been selected in our sampling frame for part of this next phase of the project. And I'll make that really clear as we go on. So the goal of this project is to study how environments shape health and well-being. I'm a developmental psychologist. We think a lot about teens, but adults and across the lifespan as well. And there are some guiding principles. This is the second time I think we've come to 4B. We want to start with community needs and interests. All data goes back to community leaders and residents, and we're not trying to come in and out. So we anticipate this being a years-long relationship, if not longer. So the first thing that we started with is we just started talking to folks, many of whom did come from ANC 4B. They were distributed throughout wards 4 and 5, but in general, we had about a quarter teens, caregivers, and then community leaders, so some ANC reps as well. We are still always down to talk to people, so I'm going to leave my contact information at the end if you'd like to participate. We talked to folks about what they think about their neighborhood and what their priorities were for health and well-being. And I'm just sharing one of the preliminary results that we have here, which is we asked folks to talk about what it means for young people to be healthy and happy. And usually you get in sort of, if you talk to a psychologist or a medical doctor, you'll get very medical responses for what good health and happiness is. But that's not really what folks were talking about. So we had a lot of people talk about building social skills and social interactions, independence, growing into being an adult and being engaged, finding something that really drives them. So what the community really thinks about as health and well-being is not necessarily what researchers might think about. And that's really important if we want to make this more impactful. So what we're doing now is we're taking these results and many others. I'll tell you that some of the other things that folks really wanted us to think a lot about, you can probably guess as ANC commissioners, were community violence exposure, social relationships between neighbors, especially given gentrification and displacement, and how do newer residents and older residents kind of get along. There's been a lot of those types of discussions. And so what we're doing is we're taking that information and building this household survey that will go out in the fall. It's about 30 to 35 minutes. All questions are completely optional. And what we included in the survey is based on the results of our first set of interviews. Folks can skip any questions that they don't want to answer, and they'll get $20 to complete the survey. So we'll have things like access to resources. I know there was a mention of the library. We've partnered with DC Public Library. We're adding some questions to the survey for them about accessing the resources and kind of where to put that new $20 million library, maybe somewhere close to 4B. And so how is it going to work? So selected addresses, I'll tell you where in a minute, are going to receive this postcard in early September saying University of Maryland, in partnership with some community leaders, is sending out this survey. And don't throw away the envelope because there's going to be some money in it. Addresses that are valid will receive this letter from us. They'll receive a FAQ sheet about questions. What are we doing? Who are you? And they'll also receive 2 single-dollar bills. The 2 single-dollar bills is a very common approach in survey methods. It's really just a thank you for not throwing our mail out. And it's, you don't have to answer the survey to get to, keep the $2 and get a pop or whatnot. You can also call and ask us for a paper packet, or you can fill out the survey online. And then households can choose to receive a gift card or a debit card emailed or mailed to their house. There are absolutely 0 fees to use the card. That's always a big concern. And if there are teens in the house, then they have the option to also complete their own form of the survey for another $20. And if folks really are excited about the survey and want to share it with neighbors in their neighborhood, you can refer your neighbors and get an additional $5 for each person you refer. So in total, the last question is, the big question is, who's in it? So if money could grow on trees, I would like everybody in DC would be included in this first wave. This is not the last wave. This is actually a pilot data set. So we're sending out 2,500 addresses, which is a lot, but it's not, I wish I was a millionaire. So what we did to select the neighborhoods is we said, all right, we're developmental psychologists. Let's select groups of blocks where at least 10% of the residents are adolescents between ages 10 and 17. Then we whittled down those blocks to blocks where we had an ANC rep or an ANC meeting where we made some contact. So all the 4B folks were included in that. And that gave us these shaded gray areas, which is where addresses from these blocks will be randomly sampled, about 60 to 90 addresses per shaded area. And again, people can refer their friends and in their neighborhoods as well to participate. So if I were you, because I am also not, I'm in Brightwood Park, I am not represented. I'm saying, well, what am I going to do? We have two other things that we have created, again, based on what folks talked about. First, we really want to hire folks as community advisors. So we're not going to pretend that we're the experts in the community. So we're hiring probably 8 to 10 people, to adults, community leaders, and even teens as well. So the kids' voices are really important as well. They'll provide feedback on the survey. They'll pilot the survey. It's about 6 hours of consulting time for a consulting fee of $240. The meetings are in August, September, and then in October. And then the last thing that we're very excited about is we're launching this youth internship program. It'll be open to high school students, and we randomly selected 2 neighborhoods. Brightwood Manor Park is one of the clusters of neighborhoods that just was randomly selected. Trinidad and Ward 5 was the other. We'll be hiring 6 to 8 16-year-old folks who are enrolled in high school or equivalent to participate in a 7-week research internship program. All transportation, food will be provided. They make $15 an hour, so it's about $1,000 across the fall period. They'll learn data collection and analysis skills, presentation skills, professional development. This is just the first time that we're doing this. We hope to do it every single summer, and hopefully in the summer too. I think that we have learned, like, maybe this could have been a summer thing more than a fall thing, but you live and you learn. No experience necessary. We're not going to be reviewing like resumes or anything. The only inclusion criteria is that you have to live in Brightwood or Manor Park or Trinidad. So we're having these 2 events where we're going to talk about these things, answer more questions. We are about to go on a big flyering campaign, also send them out to the other community organizations that we've built some relationships. And we also are going to hold kind of an ice cream social in your neighborhood in Fort Slocum on July 20th. So the University of Maryland Creamery is going to sponsor it. And, we really want to see folks come and have a scoop. We'll have games, family friendly, teens who are interested in this program, folks who want to serve on the community advisory board, and really any and all questions. So our whole team will be there. We'll have some handouts summarizing the results of the first part of the project and be able to just get to know people. So I'm much more excited about that than talking on Zoom, but we are also always around for just informal chats. We've had some informal chats at coffee shops in the area. Always happy to meet people. Doesn't need to be in a really formal setting either. So this is a project that's supported by a bunch of centers at University of Maryland, and it isn't just me. I was saving some space, but there's a whole slew of folks who are really making this happen. So, okay, now I can breathe. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and like any and all questions, please, from community members, ANC folks. I'm going to paste in, I have all these slides. I'm going to paste in the link to the slides, the link to our website. It has all of the information about the events. And now I'm going to stop talking.
Okay, Commissioner Tiffany Johnson.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for your advocacy and bringing Manor Park into this. And I will be happy to disseminate the information about the event at Fort Slocum, and we will be there.
Cool. Well, we can drop off some flyers to you as well, if that would be helpful.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I need some flyers as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, please come, or else I'm gonna have to eat all the ice cream, and
Oh my gosh.
it's not gonna be good. So.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Well, thank you very much, Dr. Gard. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Last but not least. Oh, I'm sorry, we have two more, so not last but not least, but close. We have RNA Health and Tacoma Wellness. I don't have a name, Commissioner Bramagen. Do you know who's speaking?
Yeah, can we please promote Antoine Pritchett, and then Rabbi James Kahn, Rabbi Jeffrey and Stephanie Kahn, and then hopefully they can let me know if there's anyone else on the team that I have overlooked. And I guess if it's helpful intro for just 5 seconds, ABRA, which regulates liquor licenses in the district, also regulates medical cannabis. And there's an application process right now for medical cannabis cultivation centers, where I think there are 2 licenses that are going to be up. It looks like they're going to have a public comment period that happens while we're in recess. But the entities here presenting tonight are one of the applicants, and I appreciate them coming to share info about that process.
Thank you. Who's going to, I see Rabbi Jeffrey Kahn, but I don't see anybody else yet.
I'm hoping Antoine will be elevated. He's raised his hand.
Yes, he has been elevated.
He has to accept. There we go.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, it says that I cannot start the video because the host has stopped it. I don't know if that's a me problem. There it is. All right, thank you, I appreciate it. And let me go ahead and share my screen. I appreciate the intro, Jeff. That was very, very helpful. You stole a little bit of my thunder, but that's all right. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how to share. Is there another, I guess, elevation that has to happen for me to share my screen?
No, if you hover at the lower bottom, you'll see a share button in the center of your screen.
There it is. Got it. All right, perfect. All righty. So thanks again, everyone, for the time. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I am all the way at the end. All right. So just to reintroduce myself, my name is Antoine Pritchett. I am the COO and a partner of RNA Health, or Renee and Andrea Health, which is a Ward 4 proposed medical cultivation center. So before we get into it, I would just say I really appreciate your time tonight. I know the schedule has been packed. I've been here the entire time, so I appreciate you sitting through and been grinning and bearing it till the end now that I'm here. And our goal tonight is not to take up too much more of your time or to bore you, but just to briefly introduce ourselves as RNA and to touch a little bit on the ABRA Cultivation Center application process that Jeff mentioned earlier that is currently ongoing. So with that, just to talk a little bit about who we are as an entity. So RNA is a DSLBD certified medical cannabis CBE with the EIE or Equity Impact Enterprise designation. So I apologize for the alphabet soup, but it is the nature of the game. And so we are actually an entity composed of longtime local residents, subject matter experts in various fields, including venture capital, governmental compliance, and cannabis cultivation. And we are working in direct partnership with Ward 4, Dispensary Tacoma Wellness, and we actually have common ownership with Tacoma Wellness Center, who is a long-standing member of this community with a pristine, I would say, reputation. So we're very proud to be partnering with them. And just to give you a brief overview of what our team looks like currently. So these are the members of our team, all of whom are on the call and available to answer questions following this presentation. And one thing that I would like to point out before we transition to the next slide is, and if you haven't noticed it already, I'm sure you will after I point it out, there are only 3 last names on this slide. And that's because we are a very family-oriented business. All of our C-suite is composed of one of 3 families: the Kahns, the Pritchetts, and the Joneses. And that's a stark contrast, right, to the usual multi-state operations and corporate entities who typically win these licenses. So for lack of a better word, we're just local yokels with a dream who've worked very hard to achieve it and who could very much use your support. And the way that we could use that support is in your role as the Advisory Neighborhood Commission in the ABRA licensing process. So this is the reason we're here. And ABRA has posed these 2 measures as a part of the application process, which will require the ANC's input. And we understand that you won't be in session, you'll be in recess for July and August, which is why we wanted to proactively create this opportunity for open discussion and dialogue around these measures, and as well as our ability to address both the measures and any potential concerns that you might have in the community. And our goal tonight is to demonstrate that we will not have any adverse impact on the community whatsoever. In fact, we believe that our impact will be a net positive. And so with that being said, I'd like to touch a little bit on ABRA's timeline. So I'm sure some of you are familiar. This was released last week as the revised timeline for this cultivation application process. And a few things to note. So on the 15th, they are going to notify all of the applicants of the initial review. So currently, we have not heard word from ABRA, but we at RNA do anticipate being one of the qualified applicants notified on the 15th to move forward, which is why we are here seeking your support and your understanding. So if at any time during this process listed on the screen, you have any questions or concerns or comments, please feel free to reach out to either myself or my team. And we are happy to follow up after this meeting with an email containing that contact information, so that if at any time during these dates or even thereafter, right, because our goal is to become a community partner and to not only apply, but also to be fortunate enough to be awarded this license. So we'd hope that you feel comfortable not only during the licensing process, but if we're so fortunate, even afterwards, to reach out to us with any of those questions or concerns. And with that being said, let's go ahead and address our plan, as well as any potential concerns. I'm thinking just a hunch that you might have. So our proposed location is actually 6400 Chillum Place, and that's the basement unit. So a couple things to note here. We are compliant with all established regulations, and that includes the distance to schools, firehouses, and all municipal buildings within the city. We're also properly zoned as an industrial warehouse space. And to note here with point to measure 2, which is the concentration of cultivation facilities in a particular ward, there is only one other cultivation center currently in Ward 4. And for those reasons, we don't believe that our proposed location will have an adverse impact on the surrounding community. So just switching gears here to talk a little bit about our operations. So you'll notice that our business hours are very regular. We don't anticipate any noise or busy deliveries, transit, or production outside of those business hours. In addition to that, we do intend to put in place the most state-of-the-art odor mitigation technologies, which will include carbon filters, ozone scrubbing all of the facility exhausts, and negative air pressurization to prevent particulate matter from escaping. Now, I know that probably sounded like just a bunch of technical jargon, but suffice it to say, you will not even know we're there. And that's the purpose of those odor mitigation technologies. And then lastly on this slide, our employees will be local and also provided with robust benefits as employees. You'll notice we're starting with 5. Our plan is to grow that employee number so that we can not only expand to serve the DC community, but also to provide additional employment to the surrounding residents. And for those reasons, we don't believe that operations will have any adverse impact on the community. And in fact, we believe it's a net positive when you consider the employment gains and benefits associated. So I know this is probably top of mind for everybody who's been here for the last few hours, especially with all the DDOT presentations. And I'm sure it was probably top of mind as I was walking through the first few slides. So do think it's very important to highlight here some of the traffic impacts that are possible with an operation like this and what we've done to put measures in place so that that is not an adverse impact on our part. So we believe that we will have little to no impact on the traffic because we are, I believe, one of, if not the only applicant in Ward 4 with dedicated off-street parking. And I don't need to tell you how scarce parking is on Chilham or how busy the street is. But what I do need to tell you is that we will not be adding to that problem. And that is courtesy of our dedicated parking lot in which all of our deliveries will take place in the bay, which is off the street as well. So that I know on that street, they often have deliveries and box trucks that just kind of parallel park on the street, which impedes traffic as well. There will be none of that for our facility. We actually have a dedicated bay for that. And for all of these factors, including the strict access controls, preventing anybody who's not authorized from entering the premises, we don't believe that the traffic patterns will be adversely impacted in the community. And this is all post-licensure and once the facility has been equipped. But to kind of touch on the process of reaching that point, I'd like to give you a brief overview of our timeline. So a couple of things to note here. You'll notice that, like I said, our facility is starting small with only 5 employees. But from approval of the license all the way through permitting, construction, and finalization, we don't anticipate it being any more than 4 months. And that's because all we need to do is install the equipment that's required for us to assume production. And so for that reason, we don't think that the construction will have any adverse impact on the community either. Now, the last slide, or I'm sorry, second to last, which would be the last concern, is the security plan. So I know that a lot of community members' primary concern with a facility like this is the security of such a building, and rightfully so. It's actually one of our utmost priorities. And for that reason, we've actually partnered with a best-in-class security provider in CCOM here in the district to provide these robust security measures you see on the screen. They've worked in cannabis for a number of years, securing facilities both smaller and larger than the one that we're proposing. And they also work with the federal government to design SCIFs and other secure facilities to ensure that their facilities are secured. And for that reason, and partnering with that premier partner in the security space, we do believe that our security will prevent any adverse impact on the community as well. And now, lastly, is our community support. So just to recap some of the support that we've been so fortunate to receive thus far. I could list these names off and read them to you, but I don't think that would truly be helpful. What I do think would be helpful is to tell you why they decided to write us a letter of support. And spoiler alert, it's for all the reasons that I've mentioned earlier, right? We're locally owned, we're minority owned, we're community members and longtime residents of Ward 4, and we've partnered with an entity, a proven entity in Tacoma Wellness. And the goal of that partnership, productive and harmonious part of the community, so that we can seek to have a communicative and understanding relationship. And who better to speak to that for some closing remarks and to open it up to questions, because I think we have 5 minutes for questions, is my partner and friend, Rabbi Jeffrey Kahn. So just want to give him an opportunity to tell you a little bit about, how you can help us and just some closing remarks. So Rabbi Jeff.
Well, thank you, Antoine, and thank you all for your time, and especially the late night this evening. It was 10 years ago that Tacoma Wellness Center got approval from you all for us to be able to locate in our neighborhood. We hope that you think we've been great neighbors. We love being in our neighborhood. We knew that this would be the greatest area for a grow, and we're looking forward to growing here in our neighborhood as well. So whatever questions we can answer, and we'll always be there to be able to make it the right fit.
Commissioner Yates.
I guess I'll go first. I wanted to ask about the labor practices slide. You talked about above industry average wages and benefits. What exactly does that mean? And would this entity be neutral if the employees chose to seek to form a union, or have you entered in a labor peace agreement with any labor organization?
That is a fantastic question. I'm going to direct that to our Director of Corporate Responsibility, Rabbi James Kahn.
So, hi, everybody. We would absolutely be neutral. We're certainly pro-union. I can speak for, I think for the majority of us, that we are pro-union. As far as the question about above average wages. So in the cannabis industry, you're often looking at minimum wage. We recognize the expense of living in DC. Minimum wage is not enough. So starting wages, I would say a minimum of $17 an hour. And hopefully we're going to be having a lot of salaried positions with full benefits, and that's our goal, is to make this a good career for the folks that have become part of our family.
And then I have one more question, if I could, Chair Brooks. I was just curious about former Councilmember Grosso on your slide. Is he retained as a lobbyist in this project? Is that how he's endorsed you?
He's not retained as a lobbyist in this specific project. He is connected to us through Tacoma, and he is a lobbyist for Tacoma, but he's not a lobbyist for RNA. We have not hired him to be so. So he's supporting us because he believes in this team that we've put together, and what we're trying to do for the medical patients in DC.
I have a question, which is I don't think I understand your timeline, because if you're presenting to us now, we will not have the opportunity to vote before you go to ABRA, which means we then don't have great weight in the decision. And so if we don't have the ability to weigh in, I'm not quite sure how we support you or not in this process.
Great point. So just to touch on that, so the timeline, and just to clarify, when you say timeline, are you referring to the timeline to production, the one that I showed that's at a high level?
I'm talking about the slide where you showed when the ABRA meeting would be.
Gotcha. So that timeline was actually revised by ABRA recently. Their anticipation, or what they've told us at least, is that they plan to reach out to the advisory neighborhood commissions here in the middle of July to provide you with additional information on how you can weigh in on this application process. So I wish I had more details for you, honestly, but that is the extent of what they've told us. And we do anticipate that they will be reaching out during that period on one of the dates, and then there will be a 30-day comment period following that.
We recognize that it may be difficult to vote, but they're really looking for comments on just 2 questions.
Not really how it works. Unfortunately, that's not how it works.
I have to say, we're just as confused as you. We're really hoping that ABRA provides some guidance, and we're not sure why they timed it.
Do you have a hearing date?
The hearing, no.
So you don't have a date when you need to appear before ABRA?
That's not how
we've applied. We've presented a formal application to ABRA, which they've had now since sometime last year. And so this is part of the timeline, and the way that they are going to be announcing on July 15th the first round of winners, which then will be placarded for ANC. So no one will know until July 15th who it is, and the ANCs will then have 30 days.
Okay.
We typically would have waited to do this, but but because of the session, we wanted to take advantage and introduce ourselves because we know you'll be.
Because if the timeline remains the way that they structure it, you all won't be meeting again until after the decision is made. So we really appreciated Jeff giving us the opportunity to present tonight, even though we're ahead of schedule and we may not be one of the finalists, in which case we'll still appreciate so much the time that you've given us tonight, and hope one day we'll be able to meet again.
Okay. Jeff, anything else you want to add? Anybody else have any questions?
There's a question in the chat, Chair Brooks. If you want
Would
me
you
to read
like
it.
to? I can read it. I see it. Is the medical director role as shown on the slide full-time? Was that the question?
Yes. Our expectation is that it will start out as a part-time role, and then we hope as the business grows that role will grow as well to a full-time position.
Commissioner Yates, were there any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate you all.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks for hanging around. Now, last but not least, we have Karen Garfield, Evan Goldman, and Pamela Lee with the EYA Multifamily LLC for the PUD at the Tacoma Metro Station. Commissioner Yates, Palmer, and Bramagen. Who wants to start?
I'll just introduce the presenters because they're going to update from the presentation we had last month. I did ask them, being conscious of the time, to keep it brief and limit it mostly to updates, not redo the whole plan from top to bottom. And I think they will abide by it. But given the hour, I appreciate that. And then we'll go into the letter after that.
So good evening, everybody. I am a morning person, but I'm Karen Garfield with EYA Multifamily, and I'm joined this evening by Evan Goldman and Pam Lee. Thank you for the opportunity to check in with the ANC and provide additional clarity and clarification of some of the project goals. While we're still early-ish in this process, this evening we're going to review some of the project elements and features and program that we'd like to include. We plan to submit our PUD at the end of July, and then we'll have an opportunity to get additional feedback from the DC Office of Planning, DDOT, and other agencies. And as we go through the process, there will be additional input, possibly some give and take. And once we get to that point, we'll return to the ANC, to this group, and present where we stand. For this evening, we're going to focus on some of the key projects planning and programming, but we've also posted Q&A from prior meetings on our website, and that's at tacomastationdevelopment.com, and we can put that website in the chat as a reminder. So first, the unit mix and affordability, and I'm going to really just in 10 minutes target just the handful of items that we've focused on over the last last month or so. The current design is approximately 410 units, and we're working through this design with our team, but the likely count, will likely be in that same range. 15% of the units will be affordable. Unit sizes will generally be proportional between the market rate and affordable units, and approximately 3% of the units will be at 30% of AMI, and that includes the majority of our 3-bedroom affordable units. We did apply for the DC tax abatement, which would enable us to increase the affordable units to 33%. If we are not awarded the abatement, we would agree to reapply if the requirements that they're placing on us are financially feasible and reasonable. And so that's something we'll continue to pursue. The next topic in question was about open space. Our design includes 1.8 acres of open space along Eastern and Carroll. It's active retail transit plaza along Carroll Street and a more passive recreational open space along Eastern. The plaza and the park space will be maintained by EYA and accessible to the public. As part of the PUD approval process, we'll enter into an easement agreement to make the park open and available to the public with hours to be determined. Next is the parking facilities. And the quantity of retail parking will be subject to zoning commission approval and will ultimately be calculated based on the amount of retail in the final plan. We intend to request a retail parking ratio of 2 to 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of retail, which will really ultimately depend on the targeted retail tenant mix that we get. Retail parking will be open to the general public for short-term parking and will include accessible parking spaces. And that's a code requirement, so it will be an absolute must. The current design that we've been working off of is about 16,000 square feet of retail and includes 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of retail, and that's 64 spaces. By the way, I want to make sure you can see my screen, right?
I'm sorry, I'm muted. Yes, we can.
Sorry, okay. Sorry, my computer just did something weird. Apologize. Next question was traffic calming, and calming efforts are all subject to DDOT and zoning commission approval. There are design elements to mitigate traffic impacts, namely the design creates this internal court area for loading and pickup and drop off area to all occur off of the surrounding streets. Both the WMATA and bus kiss and ride traffic will be relocated closer to the metro entrance, and we'll have dedicated drive lanes, and we'll improve pedestrian safety by introducing well-marked pedestrian crosswalks in and around the site and add curb bump outs that will reduce the distance pedestrians need to cross. If approved by DDOT and zoning, we intend to also add a traffic signal at the bus kiss and ride entrance. And this diagram is just highlighting some of those traffic calming measures that we're including in the design. Sorry, bike facilities. Like I said, I forgot the slide for that. We're going to build a shared use path. I can go back to this. That'll cut through the park and provide bikes and pedestrians access to the metro. It's not shown well on this plan, but there will be a path that traverses the site for both bikes and pedestrians. WMATA will have 30 bike lockers and 104 bike racks, and we'll continue to work with them on the design. But ultimately, what they put there for their bikes is going to be their decision, but we will continue to promote something that looks great. And also trees. We are dedicated to preserving as many of the healthy and desirable existing trees as possible. In fact, we reconfigured the site entrance, which you may not notice, but this entrance actually used to be right up here. We reconfigured it so we could preserve this tree that's right along Eastern, as well as a tree that's on this side. So this is actually the existing curb cut to the parking lot today will remain. So we, like I said, shifted that. It caused us to reconfigure the building modestly, but we think the result is really worth it. And in addition, we're going to request a variance from DDOT for the shared use path that I just mentioned, so that instead of going right along the edge where there currently are trees today, if we were to put the width of the bike path, it would go through the trees. So we're going to request approval to a variance to meander around the existing trees. And in addition, we'll be relocating one heritage tree that sits in the middle of where the proposed building will be. We'll relocate that within the park that we're creating, the new park space closer to Eastern Avenue. And we've engaged an arborist and a tree relocation specialist to help us develop a plan to fortify the trees that will be preserved prior to construction start, so we can make sure that they do really well during the stress of construction. And I really put on my fastest New Jersey speaking to get that in within 10 minutes. And I think I actually have extra time, but our schedule remains, to file our PUD this summer, have our compact hearing this fall. And our hope would be to get a zoning commission vote in 2024. And we're available to answer any questions. It was like a good night. It was like a good night story, right?
Chair Brooks has stepped away. Since this isn't my SMD, I'll step up. Do any commissioners have any questions, would like to raise their hands?
Thanks. I'm sorry, I'm back.
Okay.
But you can keep going. It's fine.
There is a question in the chat I can go to.
Go ahead.
Are the affordable units the same layout and finishings as market rate units? Are they located in one specific area or mixed in with market rate units?
Great question. They'll be dispersed throughout the building, and the finish level will be identical to the market rate units.
Okay. Is there something in the chat as well? Or is that, no, I'm
Nope,
sorry.
that's just a link to the website.
Link to the website. Okay. I almost made it through the whole 3-hour meeting without slipping. I'm sorry.
Before they leave, I wanted to highlight, so our proposed letter is on the website about this. I wanted to highlight some of the changes that were made in response to correspondence with the commission in other areas, which includes that the affordability and the affordable units is all at the 30 and 60% of area median income levels, which is more deeply affordable. A lot of these proposals are at the 80% level. The inclusion of 3-bedroom family-sized unit, which is something that the commission has pushed for. Permanent public access to the park, right? A usable park facility. And we are calling in our letter for a cooperative project process going forward to determine what the amenities would look like there, the engagement with the community around that process, and trying to build an environmentally sustainable project that also has as much affordable housing as we can bring to our community, desperately needed affordable housing as we can bring to our community as possible.
That's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this is actually the first meeting in a long time where we've had all presentations and no resolution.
Chair Brooks?
Yes.
I'd like to move approval of my letter now, if that's possible.
I'm sorry. You're right. You have a letter. You
Oh,
know, after 10, who knows what you get from me as a chair. Is there a second?
I'll second the letter.
Thank you. So I believe that Commissioner Jocelyn Johnson is having some telephone, internet phone communication issues. So can she text me her vote, or can she put it in the chat? She's on the meeting.
Can she turn on her video?
I don't think so. She was having a problem with the camera. Commissioner Jocelyn Johnson, if you can turn your camera on, let me know.
I request that she unmute.
Just ask her to text you. I agree
Okay.
with that.
You're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a second from Commissioner Bromagen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Then I heard Commissioner Parks.
Yes.
And I have a yes from Commissioner Johnson via text. I can screenshot it if I need to.
What about Commissioner Tiffany Johnson?
Commissioner Tiffany Johnson, are you there? Commissioner Tiffany Johnson, going once, going twice.
Okay, just for the record, then we have a vote of 6-0-0, 6 in favor.
Okay.
0 no, 0 abstentions.
Got it.
Okay.
All right. With that, we almost had a meeting with no votes and all presentations. All right. Thank you, everyone, for hanging around, for engaging. This concludes our meeting schedule until September. If you look on our agenda, our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 26th. Of course, announcements will go out a week in advance. I hope everyone has a safe and enjoyable 4th of July. And with that, we can adjourn the meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we go, let me also thank Angie, who is in the background running the meeting. She's been very helpful, and we need to thank her as well. So thank you very much, Angie, and I'm sorry that you went from 8:30 to 10:30. You probably were getting very used to getting off early, so thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
All righty, bye-bye.
Thank you.